What is happening, everybody? Good morning. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I'm glad that you can join me. Yes, sounds okay. I'm glad that you can join me on the show wherever you are, whether you're in the U.S., whether you're abroad. If you're under the sound of this voice, you have this American's appreciation for being so. Interesting news, and I have couple of interesting guests. Well, Laith is a normal guest. Arnaud is an interesting guest, I should say, interesting stories. Yesterday, when I was having a conversation with Sarah Bills, love Sarah Bills. I know some in the chat feel some kind of way. Love Sarah Bills. I could have one view and Sarah will still be invited on the show for that one view show. Love her to death. Her channel, DD Geopolitics, does amazing and excellent work. And if you are trying to have an update with just what is taking place around the globe, she does great work. There was this question about how did the Russians lose Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, etc., meaning you had all of these Soviet states that I would argue are important, considering Azerbaijan allowed attacks on Russian soil and Iranian soil. So yeah, I would consider that important. That you would prefer to not be hostile, and yet they are, and they don't have a rationale for it. Arnaud lives in Moscow, should be able to give a pretty good understanding of how that works. The other one has to do, I guess, two speeches. One has to do with the Russians in Syria. The other one has to do with Lebanon. Now, this has been a bubbling issue. Let me show the clip. I'll show Laith the clip when he gets back. So, right. Okay, just want to make sure. Lebanese president comes out and makes a speech. All right.
وكان الجانب الأمريكي قد عرض علينا مسودة أفكار أجرينا عليها تعديلات جوهرية ستطرح على مجلس الوزراء مطلع الأسبوع المقبل وفق الأصول ولتحديد المراحل الزمنية لتنفيذها. وهذه أهم النقاط التي طلبنا بها. وقف فوري للأعمال العدائية الإسرائيلية في الجو والبر والبحر بما في ذلك الاغتيالات. انسحاب إسرائيل خلف الحدود المعترف بها دوليا وإطلاق سراح الأسرى. بسط سلطة الدولة اللبنانية على كافة أراضيها وسحب سلاح جميع القوى المسلحة ومن ضمنها حزب الله وتسليمه إلى الجيش اللبناني. وكان الجانب
So, I don't know if you got the last part. Disarming Hezbollah. Well, that's interesting. How are you going to make that work? I'm super curious on how on earth he's going to make that work. And is he willing to have what amounts to effectively a civil war in order to try and make that work? It's fascinating to me that the Lebanese army won't fire a shot in anger, won't fire a single bullet in anger at a foreign government that is attacking them continuously. And yet he would make the speech saying we need to disarm Hezbollah. This is honestly the same energy that is coming out of many of the Arab states when they're saying they need to disarm Hamas. Look, Hamas is not your problem. You are dealing with resistance groups. And these resistance groups are not responding to ether. They're responding to real physical matter phenomena. And instead of looking at what they're responding to, you're looking at them. You're looking at them. Very weird, very strange. I get it from the standpoint of power. I get it from the standpoint of wanting to, let's say, effect some level of control. But the problem is you have no control. You're being attacked continuously. And what you're asking is for resistance groups to give up its capability to fight being slaughtered. Good luck. Good luck. We'll see. Laith, I could be wrong. Laith will come on. Laith will give his take. There's also a Russian delegation talking to Syria, which again is super interesting. I know Laith has a different point of view on this, where I think he more so blames the Russians for the fall of Syria. But I am curious on his take on this kind of continued talks that are taking place between terrorists, filthy dog government, compared to what was there before with Bashar al-Assad. Interesting. Another interesting thing that came up. So as I pointed out, Chas of Yar has fallen. In fact, before I get to Chas of Yar, this First, let's orient ourselves. Let's orient ourselves. I'm not going to drink coffee on this one because this one's kind of brutal. This is, by the way, trigger warning. Trigger warning. This is what is taking place in Gaza, in case you haven't known. We are doing that, our tax dollars. We, the US, is doing and allowing this. Anything that comes out of Trump's mouth doesn't matter. This is what we're allowing. And they are on the fortunate side because they're not being shot at. All right. On the other side of this, Israeli soldier gets caught. And because there's no food, water, these things are being withheld from Gaza, you can imagine what's going to happen to that Israeli soldier. The same thing that happens to everyone else when they're enduring starvation. The same thing. He's just a person, right? This is him giving his last request, I guess, to whoever he is talking to in a video address. And he is finally being shown what is taking place in Gaza and why he's starving to death. Now, he is making a point of saying, hey, I don't like this. This sucks. We shouldn't be starving people to death. This doesn't feel right. But is he saying this because he is in the same situation? I mean, if Netanyahu's fat ass and his boisterous wife was in the same position starving to death, well, they also have the same perspective of, hey, starving to death kind of sucks. I don't like it. And maybe we shouldn't have other people to starve to death either in the way that our government is effectively allowing people to starve to death. I hate to tell this guy. That coffee's hot. Those are some thick eyebrows. I hate to tell this guy, but his government has made the choice that he doesn't matter. His government has made the choice that it is far better for him to sit there and starve to death with the other Palestinians and the people who are around him, as opposed to ending the conflict. Because from their point of view, this is our opportunity. This is our moment. We have a Hannibal directive. We would have shot you dead if we had the chance to shoot you dead as an Israeli, as opposed to allow you to be captured. That is our policy. And as a thing of policy, we're going to pursue our objective of starving and killing as many Palestinians as we can possibly care to take this particular territory. That's what we're going to do. You are a casualty of war. That is the way his government looks at him. So no, they're not going to do anything to try to get him back. He's been in captivity for over a year. From their point of view, he is expendable. He is disposable every bit as much as the people who are on the ground that they are killing and disposing of. It is a brutal thing to watch. I don't doubt it. But he's not special in the context of the millions of other people who are there undergoing the exact same issue. If he was not Israeli, we will not be seeing this video. It is purely because he's Israeli that we are seeing this video. He does not matter. He doesn't matter. I'm not saying that as a human being on a human level. I'm saying that in the context of the other, 1.8 million people who are effectively being put through the exact same situation. And honestly, let's be honest, under worse terms. He's not being shot at. He's not, fighting for food and being shot at when he's trying to get a bag of rice or lentils. That's not the situation to which he's in. He is an Israeli who's undergoing the exact same treatment, slightly better, than the people who are on the ground, not getting food, not getting water. That includes women, children, men, elderly, the sick, etc. Your government doesn't care about you. That is your issue. And yes, he is mouthing these words of, hey, this isn't a good thing. This is not cool that we're doing this. But what he doesn't get is that if he was in military uniform, he would be enforcing this while eating a falafel and not giving a shit about the 1.8 million people that his government is starving and murdering. That's where I'm at. That's brutal, but it's true. Israel has an objective. I don't know why people were confused about this. They're acting like, oh my God, I don't know why Israel is doing this. This seems aimless. It's not aimless. It's a very specific point. We need to starve and eliminate as many of these people as we possibly can. And if we can get more efficient at the killing and the starving and the destitution, we will do that. We're going to destroy every building, every hospital, every food source. We're going to get rid of the United Nations in regards to humanitarian organizations. We are going to destroy every school, any building that is standing. We're going to do our damnedest to destroy it because our objective is to take this territory. And we have a president in office, just like the last president in office, that don't take issue with us doing it. And so he will come out and say Hamas is stealing the food. Or he will come out and say, well, if you feed these babies, I mean, that's helping Hamas, right? His ire and aim should be at his government. But I'm just pointing out that his government doesn't care. He is expendable resource. And he will be part of that organization doing exactly what he is enduring at this moment. Meaning, for any sympathies that I have, my sympathies goes to the people who are on the ground, suffering and enduring this. If he was back with his unit, he would be one of the people firing at those dangerous babies or depriving the population of food. So me being an asshole here, not coming out the blue, it's coming because this has become a norm in Gaza. And if the situation was slightly different and he wasn't stupid enough to get caught, probably was better off being shot by his own people, then he would have been doing this to the population. Just pointing it out. You might say Jamal is being an asshole. Fair enough. I can be an asshole. But what I'm saying is completely true. What I'm saying is true. Pursuant to this, Pod Save America. I don't typically view this program, if I'm being completely honest with you. This clip has been floating around, though, and I do want to share it.
State, don't take money from
the idea that a political party would affiliate itself with Nazis, and somebody says, hey, man, I don't feel like I have room in the Democratic Party. And, you know, the Democratic Party should have space for Nazis. Okay. Bold statement. Bold statement. Let me explain.
On Pod Save America Monday, I talked about some positions I'd like to see the Democratic Party take. That meant, my list was like not funding the Israeli military, recognize Palestine as a state, don't take money from AIPAC, some other stuff. And I got a message from a friend, a good progressive Democrat who was genuinely hurt. And he said to me, you are making the Democratic Party tent feel smaller to me. He said, there's room in your new Democratic Party for Zohran Mamdani and, sort of anti-Zionist views. But me, a liberal Zionist, I'm no longer welcome in the Democratic Party as you described it. Wow. Because
you shouldn't be. There should be no room for Nazis in political parties, short of a party that's full of Nazis. That should be the point of view. I don't even know why that's controversial. The idea that you say, hey, man, I'm a liberal Zionist. I don't know what that means. I know what a Zionist means. I don't know what a liberal Zionist means. And for all intents and purposes, this argument, there should be space in the Democratic Party for Nazis. Your entire leadership is full of Zionists. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Let me bring in my man. He is back. You're looking good. I'm glad you're looking healthy. Laith Marouf. He is an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonization from nations of Arab peoples to building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented and underrepresented communities around the world. You can catch him Free Palestine TV. That is where I typically see you on Twitter. Laith, how you feel, man? You doing okay?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for asking, and thank you very much for caring while I was in detention. I really appreciate you taking that public stance, and I appreciate all the help of your fans. I think the collective pressure coming from everybody helped in this. So although I can't name everybody, thank everybody that cared for my life.
No, man, I don't want to see anyone disappear into a black site, let alone you. You have been one of the most fearless people on the ground that I have seen, like shockingly so. So no, man, I am glad that you're good. I'm glad that you're healthy. I'm glad that you're back on the horse. I am glad that you are here. So thank you for that. I'm just glad you're here. And yeah, from my understanding, there was a lot of people screaming at Canada. Hadi was here. He gave a really good interview explaining what took place and everything else, and really petitioning the audience, contact Canada, contact Canada, contact the people in the administration, let them know what was taking place. And it sounds like they were screaming at the Canadians, which is good, which is good. Two main topics that I want to hit. The first one, I am somewhat enamored by, and I'm curious on your take about it. So the Lebanese president came out, gave a speech. If this shows up, come on, there we are. So the Lebanese president gave a speech. And in the context of the speech, he says the following, and I don't quite know how this is going to work in practice, if it's going to work at all. And I'm just curious on your view of it. If I can find it, there we are.
مطلع الأسبوع المقبل وكان الجانب الأمريكي قد عرض علينا مسودة أفكار أجرينا عليها تعديلات جوهرية ستطرح على مجلس الوزراء مطلع الأسبوع المقبل وفق الأصول ولتحديد المراحل الزمنية لتنفيذها. وهذه أهم النقاط التي طلبنا بها: وقف فوري للأعمال العدائية الإسرائيلية في الجو والبر والبحر بما في ذلك الاغتيالات، انسحاب إسرائيل خلف الحدود المعترف بها دوليا وإطلاق سراح الأسرى، بسط سلطة الدولة اللبنانية على كافة أراضيها وسحب سلاح جميع القوى المسلحة ومن ضمنها حزب الله وتسليمه إلى الجيش اللبناني.
So he is effectively saying, and correct me if I'm wrong if I get any of this wrong, he is passing a law through the cabinet, I would imagine parliament, that is going to disarm Hezbollah. And this is going to be enacted through law. And then my question is, okay, who is going to disarm Hezbollah? Is the Lebanese military that wouldn't fire a shot in anger at the Israelis who's bombing them continuously? Are they going to disarm Hezbollah? Hezbollah is part of the political structure. How do they think they're going to make this work? And does this create a civil war?
Yeah, I think we have to understand a few things. One is that this speech came after the visit of Trump's envoy, Barak, and also it was preceded by a speech from Sheikh Naim al-Qasim, the Secretary General of Hezbollah. And once we understand that the United States basically told Lebanon, Israel is going to attack you again if you don't disarm Hezbollah, and we're not going to stop the attacks of the Zionists. This is literally what Barak said. We're not going to stop the attacks of the Zionists until you disarm Hezbollah. Then we can think also about the speech of Naim al-Qasim saying they will not be disarming as long as there's occupation of Lebanese territory. And finally, we can see how the president here is trying to keep some leeway with his relationships with the United States, and also a maneuverability space where he proceeded, say, the disarmament of Hezbollah with the conditions of a total cessation of violations of Lebanese airspace and territory, and this total cessation of assassinations and a complete withdrawal from Lebanese territories as acknowledged by international law. So it's almost like he's saying, well, you know, we've done already our obligations under 1701, which is to disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani. The Lebanese military and Hezbollah have delivered on their obligations, and also under the obligations of the cessation of hostilities, and Israel hasn't. So there will be nothing further than that until Israel ceases to attack Lebanon and withdraws from its territories, and that's clearly not going to happen. So I don't think people should jump on this as if the president is going to somehow use the military to disarm. Whatever law he's going to pass or attempt to pass in the parliament, which is going to take months, this is all really just trying to give a maneuverability space for Lebanon, while the United States and Israel are plotting for a larger war that's going to happen on Lebanon. Most people expect probably in the next 7 days there would be an attack on Lebanon. So this is an attempt by the president to delay that inevitability. There's no way the Lebanese military can confront Hezbollah, and there is no way that the parliament of Lebanon will pass such decrees if it's clearly not with those conditions of withdrawal and cessation of hostilities, because Hezbollah doesn't only exists because there was a occupation of Lebanon. Even before October 7th, there was still Lebanese territory like Shab'a Farms and other locations in Lebanese territorial waters that were occupied by the Zionist colony. And as if Israel actually gives President Owens what he wants, Hezbollah doesn't need to exist, and which tells you why they will never give him what he wants. So put it in that when we put it in that context, it doesn't seem that drastic.
Okay, that makes sense. But Israel has never honored any of its agreements one way or the other. I mean, in fact, when Israel was talking about Iran, they said we were going to use the Lebanese model, which for them boiled down to, even though we would agree to a ceasefire, quote unquote, we are still going to continue to attack that country. So the president doesn't believe that Israel is going to be or honor those agreements, even if those agreements were met. I mean, even if Hezbollah said we're going to give up our weapons, does he really believe that Israel is going to stop attacking Lebanon?
No, I think everybody knows Israel is not going to stop attacking Lebanon, and Israel is not going to withdraw from occupied territories. Therefore, the third step in whatever he's talking about is not going to happen. He will not use the military, and he cannot use the military. There will be huge amounts of desertion from the military. Probably 2/3 of the military will desert if he attempts to do this, because that's the amount of Shia in the military. And there's a lot of patriotic Christians, Druze, and Sunnis also in the military, and we shouldn't expect them to follow the orders if they come in such ways. That's not going to happen. So I think a bigger indicator of the overall direction that Lebanon is going towards is the speech by the head of the Kataib party, one of the Christian supremacist party, Al-Jumayl, whose father was the biggest collaborator with the Israelis. And when Israel occupied 1982, they appointed him as the president of the country, and then Syria and the resistance blew him up in the palace. Point is, this is the son of the most notorious collaborator with Israel in Lebanon's history. He came out a few days ago, before the speeches of Naim al-Qasim and the president of Lebanon, saying, when somebody asked him about the disarmament of Hezbollah, he said, this is not the time to talk about this, especially given the massacres that are happening of the Christians, Druze, and Alawis, and Shias in Syria as we're still talking. So we know that, in fact, the majority of the Christian population right now is getting armed to the teeth. The Druze population too. This is forgetting the Shia and so on. So it's the majority of the population will not allow right now the country to fall to a situation where it cannot defend itself, where the Israelis and the Wahhabi death squads are knocking on the door.
That's what I was going to go with. So the belief is that the Jelani death squads, for all intents and purposes, going to come from the north for some level of an attack in order to try to, it's counterproductive, induce the Lebanese to give up their weapons and give up their arms. But the belief is that that attack is coming.
Yeah, look, there was already skirmishes on the border in the north again over the last 3 days. Those are all just, pressure points.
Yeah.
But if the pressure would have worked, it would have worked long time ago. With all, it's now, 7 months, 8 months almost of quote unquote ceasefire, while continuing to bombard Lebanon and continuing destruction of the south and continuing attacks from the north since the fall of the Damascus government. And that didn't work. So what we should be expecting is it's going to happen. And the Israelis cannot invade from the south because they destroyed the majority of the south. There's nothing there. So if they attack by land from the south, Hezbollah will just carpet bomb the already destroyed villages on top of them, and they will be squashed. So the expected attack strategy will be the Israelis are right now occupying inside Syria, a few kilometers away from the main border crossing between Syria and Lebanon, in the middle of the Beqa Valley, the Masna border crossing. And if they invade from there, they'll be right now in the middle of the Beqa Valley immediately. It's just a few minutes. Okay, you're right on the border, right in the middle of the Beqa Valley, and that will cut the country in half. And the Wahhabite squads will attack from the north at the same time. That's the expected attack strategy if the Israelis decide to invade. And the last time they attempted to do this was in 1982, as they were, occupying Beirut. They tried to do the same thing, but then there was the Syrian military and the Syrian Air Force, which had the largest tank battle in history post World War II between the Israeli ground forces and the Syrian ground forces, and the largest air battle post World War II, again over those areas. And the Syrian military crushed the Israelis decisively at a huge cost. They lost 70 somewhat aircrafts, and the Israelis had to retreat. This was that day, 1982, when there was a Syrian military. So what is going to happen if the Israelis invade from there with no Syrian military to defend the soft, side of the Beqa Valley?
That is disturbing. That is very disturbing. So, okay, so we're looking at an attack from the north and from the south, and we're looking, from your point of view, what is going on in Syria with the Bedouins? I've had people on the show who said that the Bedouins weren't controlled by Jelani, that they were just animals on their own. I've had others who said they were controlled by Jelani, whether they were wearing a uniform or not. These are just kind of terrorist groups that were ostensibly under his control, going after the Druze community. But it's weird. I mean, as I've pointed out, it's very contradictory. They would say something to the effect of, we are going after the Druze because they're Israeli collaborators. But then they would also say, but then it's like, but your guy, the quote unquote president that is taking power, the jihadist president, is working directly with Israel and has been making one treaty after the next, meaning trying to get Israel and entice Israel in some kind of deal for the last several months, ever since he's taken power. What's really happening in this situation?
You see, it's important for us to notice how the Zionists and the imperialists try to confuse people in terms and abuse terms. Like when they want to talk about Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel, they will call them Arabs, right? And the specific, putting on a separate category the Druze, other than the other Palestinians, okay, inside. Right. And here we have to demystify these things. Number one, all Arabic people are Bedouin. We all were nomads. Okay, Bedouin means nomad. Like it's not sedentary like person. And the Druze are Bedouin. They're originally from Yemen, okay, and they traveled across the Arabic world when the dam of Sheba collapsed. Okay, they left Yemen looking for a better place. And Druze are also Muslims. They're just a sect called Unitary Muslims. Okay, and the word Druze is only used usually by, colonialists. Honestly, they don't call themselves Druze; they call themselves Unitary Muslims, right?
I see.
So these are all terms that are put there just to create divisions that don't exist. And myself, I'm from Deir ez-Zor. We're also Bedouin, okay? Originally, my family and so on. And, my great-grandfather, the Mufti of Deir ez-Zor, and at the end of the Ottoman era, Sheikh Muhammad al-Arfi, was the, comrade in arms of Amir Sultan al-Atrash, the leader of Suwaida Unitary Muslims, quote-unquote, Druze sect, during the French occupation. And my grandfather from Deir ez-Zor and Amir al-Atrash from Suwaida were the leaders of the Great Syrian Revolt against the French occupation. Okay, so that shows you that there's no animosity between these communities. And now what the imperialists and the Zionists are trying to do with their chameleon contras that change their Velcro patch here from ISIS to Al-Qaeda to Al-Nusra to HTS and now to quote-unquote Bedouins, okay? These are the same mercenaries and changing their colors depending on what the propaganda scheme requires. They're trying to create a schism between the rest of Syria and the Suwaida region and the Unitary Muslim sects, okay? When historically, revolts in Syria come from three regions: Suwaida, Deir ez-Zor, and the coast. And those communities are dominated by, in Suwaida, the Unitary Muslims, quote-unquote Druze, the coast, the Alawites, and the, the desert and river area of Deir ez-Zor being dominated by the Sunni tribes, okay? So what the US needs to do and Israel to destroy Syrian identity, to destroy Syrian unity and coalescence, is to separate those three regions from the heartland of the cities between Aleppo and Damascus. Usually city dwellers and the middle class and the merchant class go with whoever is in power. It is the countryside usually that revolts, that is, doesn't have an investment in the state's stability, right? So what the Americans did over 15 years was to rob Deir ez-Zor and the proud Syrian Bedouin Sunni tribes of the Deir ez-Zor of all of their resources, the oil, the gas, the wheat, the cotton, destroy their main cities, Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa, to the ground. There's nothing left of my hometown, Deir ez-Zor, and make them into homeless peoples wandering with no roots, and get them to forget what my great-grandfather did and the tribes of Deir ez-Zor against the French occupation. Make them forget their relationship to the rest of the country. And the second stage was what we saw the Americans and their Wahhabi death squads do to the Alawis of the coast, killing all their notables, their doctors, they're destroying all their homes and so forth, And what was left of the three pillars that could uplift Syria from occupation was Suwaida. And this is what we're witnessing right now, trying to break the will of the people of Suwaida to sever their ties to history and to the glory of Amir Sultan al-Atrash, okay, and his leadership against French occupation, and get them to run to be saved by Israel. This is what they want the people of Suwaida to do that, and up until now they're refusing, the people of Suwaida.
Yeah. Well, and so this is still Jelani U.S. backed in its operation and in the form that it's effectively taken. That despite all of this idea that these are separate groups, these are separate people, that's not really the case. That you have a group that is connected, let's say culturally and historically, to Syria, that they're trying to break that connection, to have Israel to be the quote unquote savior in the situation.
Yes, and they're killing whole bloodlines, as has happened in Palestine. They're, anyone that has any connection to those bloodlines of revolts against French occupation are being killed. Every child, woman, and man, elder or not, from whole families are being hunted down so as to have this severance from history that they're trying to institute. So these are the road bandits, the pirates, the mercenaries, the hordes that the U.S. has set on Syria, the same ones, just changing colors.
This wasn't a question I was thinking about in advance, but I am curious on your take living in that area. This feels so demonic to me. And I mean that in the fullest term of the word, evil. And it's not just in Syria. I mean, when I would tell my mom about foreign policy, I would tell her life doesn't matter. And she would be shocked by the thing, because most people would be shocked when you say something like that. But it's like life doesn't matter in the context of the way we look at foreign policy in the United States, or at the very least the leadership that comes up with these war plans and these plans of global supremacy. Whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in the West Bank, whether it's in Syria, it's almost as if they've come to the conclusion that there's a group of disposable people that we can just eliminate. And I mean this by Europe also, by the way, because Europe may be doing this ass-saving maneuver of we believe in a two-state, but it's an ass-saving maneuver. They back this the entire way through. And I would argue they still back it now. These are just Europeans, right? What does it make you think and feel like living in that region when you know that there is a large number of either Europeans or Americans that are enacting these plans and are moving people around as if they were chess pieces, not caring about the real physical matter of life that these people are enduring? I was showing this video before you got here, and I was trying to make the point of saying, this is policy. This is not, if you talk to Trump, Trump will say, well, if you feed babies, you're helping Hamas. And then they'll show a picture of this Israeli as if he's special. It's like, why is that guy special? That guy's not special. He's just enduring what he would be putting people through if he wasn't stupid enough to get caught or stupid enough to get shot. Give me your thoughts on this. And then I move to my other issue. But I am just curious, just as an overt articulation point of view of being in the region and seeing the level of evil that they're willing to enact on just human beings.
Look, if I wasn't an avid reader of history, I would feel that this is kind of dangling out of time, this moment. But when you look at human history, you realize that this is a repetitive story. And in fact, it's, when you're living in this area, you even no matter how secular you'd like to be, in the end, you do feel this weight of time, which is, Father Time, one of the indicators of the eternal life that is there. So if you are here, you see those patterns much clearer, and you understand why every prophet was killed, and you understand why they had to be killed to move the masses who are need those sacrifices to see the path, the footprints of the Creator. I say these things not to scare people away from those who are not religious or anything like this, but it is truly it's truly would be selfish of me as a Palestinian, as an Arab, to think somehow my story is going to be different. That I, for instance, with all my work, I somehow can achieve what Muhammad or Jesus or Moses couldn't, or Che Guevara for that matter. It allows you to put things in perspective of your place in life and the course of time, and the eternity of this struggle that is the test for all of us. Where, how do you treat other human beings? And how much do you allow of injustice to pass in front of you and do nothing about it? That's really the test of life. Are we going to have a utopia, heaven on earth? Can I achieve that or not? In the end, it becomes irrelevant. What is relevant is what have I done in my lifetime on this earth.
Yeah. The last story I want to hit has to do with this. This is coming out of RT. This meeting took place, I believe, yesterday. Syria counting on Russia's support to push for the, quote, domestic unity, unquote. Damascus is eager to restore proper ties with Moscow, jeopardized in the following years since the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad. Now, I know that you and I have different points of view on what happened in Syria regarding Russia's influence or Russia's, let's say, dropping the ball and not allowing Syria to fall. But what do you make of that? I mean, you effectively have a terrorist government that is aligned with the West, that is doing everything in their power to get support from Israel and America. America has removed the sanctions. They are obviously working at the behest of America, Turkey, Israel, etc. And here you have the Russians, I guess, trying to make some kind of deal with Syria, saying, hey, we depend upon your support for quote unquote stability. How does that fit into this narrative of what has been taking place so far?
Yeah, and I mean, this is members of this government killed Russian soldiers.
Yes.
So that's a question that Russians need to answer, and families of those soldiers need to find an answer to. I personally think that Russia has harmed itself with its actions in Syria, harmed its future. In fact, I would say there wouldn't have been any Russian international space on the international scene if it wasn't for Syria. Let me just be very frank, and whoever likes it, and whoever doesn't like it, I don't care, honestly. Yeah. Russia would have stayed a second-rate power if it didn't intervene in Syria. Syria is the one that uplifted Russia into an international scene. Okay, the intervention that's Martyr General Soleimani, who personally traveled to Moscow to meet with President Putin, who wasn't convinced of even saving Syria. That, whatever General Soleimani said to President Putin, I bet you it had the same tones that I'm using right now. And let's not forget, Russia right now is rushing to build bases in Libya in case that it loses its bases in Syria, and it's building them in areas that Turkey occupies in Libya. So it's going to be basically under Turkish protection, its bases in Libya. And Libya would have been an open place for Russia if it didn't also fail General Muammar al-Qaddafi and the country when the NATO attack came at the country. So we're looking at series of Russian failures over the last decade and a half, and only being actually maintaining its now international influence because of the sacrifices of others, the sacrifice of Libya, the sacrifice of Syria, and the sacrifice of General Soleimani himself.
Do you accept, though, that how can I say this? I agree with you that the fall of Syria was detrimental to Russia, especially in that region of the globe, and to Iran, for that matter. Do you believe that Russia and Iran, left to their devices, would have had the capability of maintaining the Syrian state, even with everything that was taking place when the fall occurred?
Look, over the last 2 weeks, I interviewed a lot of former Syrian generals,
yes,
and Syrian personalities. I haven't aired any of the interviews yet. We're having to right now, modify the video and the audio so these people don't end up being killed. And I know exactly what happened in the last hours in Syria.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you tell us? I mean, is it? I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yes. Look, I was hoping that to finish this content, so people, because we talk a lot, and people tell you, where do you know these things? How do you know these things? And they have their own stories. But hopefully, in the next few days, this will be out. But here's what we know. The Syrian military was fighting the good fight. Both the 8th Army in Latakia was advancing through Idlib and was at the doors of Idlib city itself. And Hezbollah's forces in Homs had defeated the hordes coming from Aleppo and Hama, and pushed them back, and were at the gates of Hama city to recapture them. When the Russian Air Force bombarded the 8th Army at the doors of Idlib city and attacked its supply routes, its ammunition depots, and its gas depots. And similarly, the column of Hezbollah between Homs and Hama was attacked by the Russian Air Force. At least 60 Hezbollah armored vehicles were destroyed in this attack. And this is what really led to the defeat of the Syrian military. As soon as this happened, because multiple the communications, which are all Russian communications of the Syrian military, was jammed, and orders of retreat and surrender were coming. Multiple generals, both in the Damascus surrounding areas, and the Homs, Hama, and Deir ez-Zor areas all refused orders and went ahead and confronted the HTS. And the attacks that came from Russia, this is very also important for everybody to know, that it wasn't HTS that occupied Damascus. There is the Fourth Army in the south that was stationed in Daraa, that was created by the Russians after the reconciliation efforts that were done with the rebels in Daraa, or the death squads that were in Daraa at the time. A separate army, the Fourth Army is called, was created for them under Russian control and auspices, and they entered Damascus before HTS. HTS convoys coming from Homs towards Damascus were stopped by the Russians and told to wait, while the Fourth Army coming from Daraa entered Damascus and confronted the remaining Republican Guard that were refusing to surrender, and the generals were assassinated. And eventually, the Fourth Army entered all the security offices in Syria and set all the files on fire. All the archives were set on fire, all that on the first night in Damascus. And after all the records were cleared, all the, the security offices were destroyed, the Fourth Army withdrew, and that's when HTS and Jolani were allowed to enter Damascus. All of this was done under direct coordination and orders of the Russians. The Hezbollah and the Republican Guard and the Iranians were all left in the dark and were made to be targets as President Assad was kidnapped to Moscow.
But considering that this was, as you would admit, damaging to the Russians, and that I think even they would admit this was damaging to the Russians, the last thing they would want to do is end up in Libya under Turkish thumb. Erdogan is a snake, and you can't trust Erdogan as far as you can throw him. Why would they do that? What would be their motivation for attacking a military position that, all things being equal, it was in their best interest to keep?
Well, there's two things here. Number one is the still continued Russian delusions that they can somehow be part of this whiteness identity and or even lead it now, with the rebranding of Russia as the savior of the Christian family. And so there's that. There's, of course, the, millions of Russian citizens of the Zionist colony that have a lot of control around inside Russia itself and its economy also. And of course, the rabbi of President Putin is the head of the Shabbat movement. And the Shabbat movement is the ultra fascist Zionist. I mean, even President Trump doesn't have a Shabbat rabbi. Okay. So this shows you the limitations that we are dealing with as people from the Arabic world.
But what would have been the point of Soleimani going to Russia and Russia agreeing with him in order to hold Syria if they're just going to turn around a few years later and give it up? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm probing because this is a point of view I haven't heard before, and I need to watch your videos when you put them out. But I am curious, why protect it in one sense and then give it up a few years later?
Because of Ukraine. The West strong-armed Russia into this war in Ukraine, forced them into it, which has now, in a way, distracted all the Russian economy and military into its own backyard. You see, Syria elevated Russia back from the collapse of the Soviet Union into a world power that can decide, that has a say in the future of the world. Russia's exit from Syria and its quagmire in Ukraine clips its wings and brings it back to its true size, which is a regional power, unable to compete with the United States on a global scale in terms of setting the path of history. And anyone that wants to set the path of history has to do it from greater Syria region, from Damascus, from Beirut, from Jerusalem. You can't set it from another place on this planet.
Is it possible, to any degree that's possible, and again, I need to see your videos, I need to watch them, because I am curious about seeing what the generals say, that this is them not wanting to accept that it unraveled and putting the blame on Russia? I mean, what sense did you get when you were talking to them? Is this, I don't want to deal with personal blame, so I'm going to put it and say the Russians did it? Or you got the sense that, no, they're telling me exactly what they experienced? It came across as honest and straightforward in their depiction of events, of what took place in the last few hours. Because that is a brutal depiction, if that's true. Because that would be, as you point out, a series of failures by the Russians that is cataclysmic. Losing Syria is detrimental, not just to Syria, it's detrimental to Iran, which by definition means it's detrimental to Russia and to China. That's a hell of a loss, especially to turn around and effectively attack forces that you were supposed to be defending.
Yeah, I remind everybody two things. One is in 2018, the last battle around Idlib and the liberation of Hama and Aleppo.
Yes.
The HTS and all these Wahhabi death squads were being routed and pushed towards Idlib city, their last holdout. And Idlib city is it's a town. It's not a city. It's just a few 100,000 people. It's not like even 1 million people.
So 40,000 were terrorists. I mean,
yeah.
by the UN estimate, it was like 40,000 were terrorists.
Yeah. So, and when you're on, so Hezbollah and the Syrian military were pushing the terrorists towards Idlib city. There was a huge battle on the intersection of the M4 and the M5 highways, the main two highways in Syria, just at the intersection between Aleppo, Hama, and Idlib. And the Turkish military had to intervene directly. Prior to that, in that battle, the Turkish military was just giving, suppression fire through its howitzers to aid those terrorists. At that point, the whole defensive line of the terrorists collapsed, and the allied forces of Syria were pushing, and they were going to just enter the city. And that's when the Turkish military directly intervened, and they got a whooping. 40 Turkish soldiers were killed in a span of minutes, and tens of armored vehicles destroyed. And the Russian Air Force decided to stop all the air cover.
Pull back, right?
Okay. And at that point, the Turks flew over Idlib with their F-16s and started bombarding the advancing columns of the allied Syrian forces. And so if Russia didn't stop Hezbollah and the Syrian military from advancing by continuing to give them air cover, the Idlib would have been liberated then, and we wouldn't be talking about what happened in December and the fall of Damascus. So Russia made a deal then, and it forced the Astana talks, and it started negotiating with Turkey, because as you remember, also Turkey at that time was threatening to close the Bosphorus canal strait, meaning blocking Russia's Black Sea fleet from entering the Mediterranean. And Russia buckled, and that led that withdrawal of Russian air cover led to the martyrdom of tens of Hezbollah and Syrian military commanders under those conditions, and the ceasefire was declared then. So Russia, from that point on, has made the choice that it's going to negotiate with Turkey using Syria as a pawn. And it's Iran's attempt to bring air defenses into Syria, and Syria's military was vetoed and threatened by the Russians to leave completely if Iran entered air defenses into Syria. Those are not jokes. Syria at this point was dependent on the presence of Russia's air force, and it couldn't take decisions without its approval, even when its allies were trying to help it.
Yeah. Wow. Laith, I am going to look forward to those interviews. That is a hell of a get in order to be able to get some of the Syrian commanders who were on the ground in the last minutes. I thank you for this. Honestly, man, I'm glad that you're back. I'm glad that you're safe. I'm glad that you're back on the horse.
Thank you, Jamal.
Be safe, man. You have a good one. Have a good one. All right, let's see this. And we're going to go from one damn good guest to another. If I can get to him, there he is. Arnaud Develay. Arnaud, man, how you doing today? It's not morning for you. It's today for you. How you doing? You doing all right?
I'm doing fine, Jamal. How are you?
I am doing all right. Arnaud, he is author, political analyst, international lawyer, specializing in international criminal law. His latest books, Foreign Entanglements, Joe Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. I never asked you about that. What do you mean by the fracturing of American political consensus? What's that last blur means in our political system?
Well, it meant essentially that up to now we had proxies operating on behalf of U.S. interest in X, Y, and Z countries, never to a point where the U.S. would completely take over the running of the country in a way that would influence back on the U.S. congressional agenda.
Right.
So Ukraine became de facto almost like a U.S. state, and that's something we had never seen before, including in Vietnam, where we had our guys, or even in Iraq, where Saddam was doing U.S. bidding for years. But whatever was going on within Iraqi society was not of the U.S. business per se on a day-to-day basis. Whereas here we're talking about, as Arnaud Delet mentioned, an external management model. So that's what I meant by that.
Interesting.
It was a departure from the usual way of doing things.
Like the Shah, for example, in Iran. He does his own thing, even though
he does his own thing. Yeah, as long as the cheap oil keeps flowing, whatever you need to do to keep things under control, we are not going to butt into it. We trust you to do it for us. Period.
But Ukraine was different because Ukraine was direct management.
Yes, Ukraine laws were actually written by the U.S. State Department. So the legislative agenda was completely controlled by the U.S. Embassy in Kiev.
Explain to me something. So I was in a conversation yesterday with Sarah Bills, DD Geopolitics. And one of the things that came up was the Caucasus. And again, this is, I was fascinated by the conversation because I didn't have an answer for it. I didn't quite understand it. How did Russia lose these countries? Now, you may say they're small. Fair enough. From my understanding, more of Ukraine has been taken than the entirety of Azerbaijan, meaning size-wise. Like if you can put Azerbaijan into the territory that Russia is effectively taking from Ukraine, fair enough. But it is still somewhat of a pain in the ass to lose these countries that were, let's say, part of the Soviet Union and part of Russia's sphere of influence that seems to have fallen out of their sphere of influence. Armenia is a good example. Pashtian has been leaning further and further to the West. And I understand he took feelings when Nagorno-Karabakh was taken and Russia was like, hey man, you're leaning to the West. Why are you asking us for help now? If Azerbaijan goes into Armenian territory, fair enough, but the world doesn't consider Nagorno-Karabakh Armenian territory. And even Azerbaijan, where they seem to have gotten closer to Turkey, lean closer to the United States. I mean, even to the point of talking about putting a corridor. I can't think of the exact name of it at the moment. I can see it in my mind of where it is.
Zangezur.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't going to be able to pronounce
I
that.
know.
But you get my
not easy
point,
to.
right? Like they were talking about like a 99-year contract with the United States. Okay, that's outrageous. If you're Russia or Iran, the notion that the United States is going to have this kind of military component, like right on their border, is outrageous. How did Russia lose these countries? Like, what pushed them away?
Well, I think we need to look in at the circumstances. If you speak about Armenia, the circumstances which saw the election of Pashinyan. Pashinyan was a U.S. plan from the get-go. So that's basically how it played out. You know, it was a velvet revolution, dressed with all the legal clausing of democracy. But Pashinyan was already working for the West. And so that's par for the course as far as what we've seen happening ever since. And Azerbaijan, I think you have to look at the situation through the prism of pan-Turanism and you know, this alliance of Turkic people.
Right.
So yeah, so that's the idea.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that a good excuse? Like meaning?
Well, it's not a. It's not a matter of excuse. It's just, you know, you basically try to provide the Anglosphere always examines ahead of time when they want to try to establish a foothold. They are looking at the pre-existing and long-standing ethnic and or religious and or geographical issues or dead spot, as it were, and they press on that and they exacerbate this particular element so that they can create this kind of constructive chaos out of which they pull, you know, their nuggets from. This is how they do it. So I wouldn't say that Russia lost those areas per se in terms of influence. It's just that I guess where like 2017, Syria, Russia was involved in Syria, and I don't think they necessarily, you know, paid great attention to what was going on in the South Caucasus, while the Western powers were already actively trying to position themselves to initiate a process which today sees them pretty much well ensconced. I mean, that's
Yes.
not euphemism to say that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. They're in.
Which is
You know,
my
they got in by the back door. Yeah.
Which is my point.
But yeah, and they probably accelerated, you know, because Georgia, admittedly, was candidate to create a, you know, someone would say a second front, right? But that failed when the Georgian Dream Party won the election. They tried one last time through the lame duck president to contest the result of the elections in Georgia, but that did not follow up on the street. I mean, the attempt to color revolution the country failed. So they had to find an alternate solution in earnest, and so in so doing, they reactivated this the South Caucasus card, and we see it because everything is almost coordinated to a T between the actions of Pashinyan against the Armenian Apostolic Church, which is the core component of Armenian DNA. I mean, you cannot be, as an Armenian living abroad, wishing to reconnect with your roots and, let's say, get Armenian citizenship. You have to prove that you were baptized by the Armenian Apostolic Church.
Really?
You have to show, you have to provide a certificate of baptism. So you don't have an Armenia without the Armenian Apostolic Church. It's almost like unfathomable as a proposition on its face.
Wow.
And so when we see, because I mean, it would have been unheard of, unthinkable for any Armenian heads of state, secular heads of state, to go after the Apostolic Church. It's almost like
it's unheard of.
It's completely crazy on its face to do that, right? I mean, you could have, you know, political rivals and what have you, within domestic politics, but to go after the church, because the head of the church, of the Armenian Apostolic Church, is reputed to be the direct descendant of the founding apostle. Apostolic means apostle, right? So it's the oldest Christian nation in the world, and as such, the church is it's not just like in the what I call the zombie Catholic Church in France. The Armenian Apostolic Church is a very vibrant component of the Armenian political scene, and to go after their leaders who are not just elected, but they are they have some kind of celestial mandate, almost a direct descendants, direct line. Yes, it's crazy, and replace it by some guys that you chose, from your own acquaintances. It's unfathomable.
Oh, that's super interesting. Is it that Russia is playing a different game than the West? And just to be clear, this is not me making an argument to overthrow governments. This is not me making an argument to assassinate people, none of that stuff. But I'll give you another example. Germany has been making a play. I think this is Armenia, if I can remember correctly. Yeah. They're putting in NGOs. They're putting in groups. They're making money into media. They're doing all of this stuff in order to change the point of view and the context of people in Armenia. And I'm saying when the West is trying to get into countries, it does something similar. I mean,
that's par for the course. That's like a playbook. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. Like 90% of the media that was going into Ukraine was being paid for by USAID, NED, et cetera, in order to shape and change the point of view of the Ukrainians, especially the West. Why? Russia clearly can see that that's happening. And yet it doesn't seem to do or contest those actions that I can tell. What's different? Why don't they do that? I don't have an answer for this question. And this question is fascinating to me. Because from my point of view, in the States, South America is our sphere of influence. Canada is our sphere of influence. Look at what Donald Trump is doing to Canada right now. He's putting the screws to Canada because Canada is taking a point of view on Palestine. Now, it's absurd, but he's doing it. And you can go back, God knows how many years or decades that the United States and South America is our sphere of influence. We will exert influence over them. Now, granted, we were paying for kill squads. That's not what I'm asking Russia to do. But I am curious as to why Russia doesn't take actions like this. RT, Sputnik are somewhat recent phenomena. What's the difference? Why don't they do this?
I think it has to do with political culture, first and foremost. Imperialist state devise a whole slew of instruments to accomplish their aims.
Yeah.
And the hybrid warfare has been, almost like the Anglosphere has a copyright almost on this way of doing things. Whereas Russia privileges somewhat, first and foremost, military might. But sometimes military might, it's almost like a hammer, anytime you see a screw, you have a hammer. So that's a one trick pony. That's one solution.
Right.
But, you could avoid having to resort to deploying your armed forces when the proverbial, hits the fan, by having, some kind of similar counterpart equivalent. It's not complicated. Russia has the budget for that, but why don't they do it? I don't know. It's they don't believe in it. It's deeply ingrained in political culture. They don't really believe in this or see the use of it. I guess it's as plain as that. That's my take on it.
Okay,
And believe me, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I've been trying to advocate for that, but it just seems like
so you've been advocating. They just don't.
We have our SS-27, we have our Zircon hyper missiles, we have our what have you, right? That's enough if need be. And I guess it also reflects I guess when you play chess, the whites are going to open, so you play offense, and then the blacks are going to defense. Well, Russia has always adopted historically a defensive stance on any kind of theater. That's how they do it. They don't They don't create the situation, they remedy the situation using good old-fashioned military capabilities.
I know.
So in that sense, with that mindset, they don't feel like they need to influence countries abroad. And then I guess it's also a remnant of the shading of imperial Soviet times. Under the Soviet Union, you would have had all those things, yes, because there was a driving ideology. And the idea was trying to promote this ideology, you know, all the way down to Africa, even though they were presented as liberation movement in Rhodesia and Angola, and you know, I mean, Cuban troops were in Africa liberating some of those countries, you know, like Zimbabwe and all that. So, but there was like I say, the driving ideology, which basically allowed for budgets to be allocated to some, you know, propaganda activities, soft power, one would say today, soft power. But today, the Russian Federation does not do that. Russian Federation is a very conservative country in its approach to you know, foreign policy. They really intervene, like we saw in Syria. I mean, they didn't try to mollify the ground before they went in. It took a lot of round trips by the late Soleimani to Moscow to explain to them, if you don't cut the head of the snake in Syria, you will find them in the Caucasus. And it wasn't like a one trip or one visit that resolved it. It took a lot of massaging. And in the end, when Russia made its decision, they went in with military force. There was, you know, there was no intermediary step, you know, no hors d'oeuvre, no appetizer. You just go in with the pièce de résistance immediately. I know, but it's a policy. It's a I guess it's, you know.
But it's a bad policy.
It's political.
Because then you get.
I don't know if it's bad.
You don't.
I don't know if it's.
But you get. Lavrov.
Well, I
mean, you get Lavrov out there saying it's Russia fighting the world. And it's like, dude.
Yeah, it is. Well, not the world, but the West, the whole West, yes.
Right. But if your policy is, we're not going to intervene, we're going to do our own thing, we're going to leave countries to their own devices, and the U.S. policy is we're going to work and dump money and everything else that is possible into these countries to get them to agree with us. If we have to bribe, steal, kill, whatever it is, we're going to do it. And then you get surrounded, which that's what I'm saying. Like, is it really a better policy if how you end up is soft power is allowing and bringing these countries into your camp, whereas we're waiting until we're going to use military force? By the time you use military force, it seems like you've given up the ghost. I mean, it seems like it's too late. It's, as you say, a brutal hammer, when really you may not have needed a hammer if there was more soft power being exerted.
I agree, but there's this whole stigma of you know, outspending what you have in your coffers to such an extent that you go bankrupt. And this is what happened to the Soviet Union, remember?
Yes.
By trying to actively being on the offense, ideologically speaking, back in the days of the Cold War, that ended up, because of, I guess, the economic model was flawed, but whatever the explanation, in the end, it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, not as much because of, you know, specific policies, but because they spent more than they were more money than they were generating. Yeah. And at the expense of probably domestic needs, and so basically, yeah, that was the game plan back then, was to basically outspend them and force them to outspend, you know, their own capabilities until basically the edifice collapsed. And this is what the West is actually trying to do today, because this is the same playbook. The West is sticking to the same playbook as far as Russia. They want them to expand. This is what, in fine, when you read between the letters, between the lines, sorry, the Rand Corporation white paper in 2019.
Overextend.
Look at the title. It's all in the title. It's exerting, stressing, and
overextend.
Basically, overextend Russia at its borders and beyond to the extent it's possible. So the last thing the Russian leadership wants to do these days is to be sucked into some kind of quagmire where, you know, all their blood and treasure will be spent for nothing. And if the Syrian situation is any example of that, we saw that even under very carefully managed conditions, it can still happen, which is probably also another reason why, when they realized that, I guess it's the chicken or the egg, because if you were to ask me, if you save somebody's ass politically, your ass belongs to you. You're going to say what I say. You're going to say what I do. You're going to remove those people and replace them with such people. But in Syria, we didn't see that. In Syria, there was this discourse that Syria is a sovereign state and we are no one to tell President Assad what he should do. Well, maybe to some extent, but the problem is President Assad then was surrounded by people who basically told him to act against Russian interest. And so one thing led to another.
You got to explain that. How was he acting against Russian interests?
Well, in 2020, there was a purge in the national security apparatus of Syria, and all the pro-Russian officers were removed from Damascus to provincial areas. So they were essentially taken out of the loop.
I see.
And in that sense, some of the people who were behind this started establishing contact with Turkey and Qatar. And over time, they convinced Assad that salvation lay with the Arab League and the Gulf states, and through the Gulf states, we would be able to manage the lifting of the sanctions. I mean, why not? On the paper, why not? It looks like something that you could envision, but in the end, that was a trap. There was never any intent. I mean, can you imagine the Gulf state actually having the leverage to convince the United States, and more importantly, behind the United States, the state of Israel, to lift the sanctions against one of their secular enemies in the region, one of the linchpin of the axis of resistance? So it was always an illusory promise, if you ask me. But that's what that's the playbook they adopted.
But I guess that's kind of my point. Like for Iran, for example, Pezeshkian and the reformist government, and you get Israel, who has blood on their hands, and knocking on their door, and the U.S. is like, "Hey, let's negotiate," and Iran is like, "Okay." It's like, these people are monsters. What do you mean negotiate?
I know. You don't negotiate with monsters. Yeah.
It's like you can see them going through the countryside, taking down government after government after government. It's like, there's Iraq, there's Afghanistan, there's Libya, there's Syria, and with blood on their hands, they're like, "Hey, let's talk." And Iran is like, "Okay."
Yes. Sure.
So
why
it's
not?
like, I don't get it. I didn't understand it for Iran, and even for Syria, it's like, why on earth are you talking to these monsters? And yet, but I guess that's what I'm saying with the Russia thing. It behooves Russia to exert more political influence to avoid these situations. Syria wasn't bad. Syria was a good play on the Russian side. I agree with that play. I thought that play was fantastic.
But Russia didn't want to be perceived, I guess, in the narrative as a country that basically, I know. Well, like I said, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. No matter what you do, the Western press is going to portray you as an authoritarian regime, blah, 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 blah. You know the spiel.
Yes.
So what do you care about? I mean, I know. You're preaching to the converted here. Yeah, I know.
Iran, Syria, China.
It's a serious game here. Yeah, geopolitics, because you lost, I mean, some might say the game is still on. There was a Syrian delegation in town yesterday. So
yes,
the discussion about some of Russia's interest in Syria, the country formerly known as Syria, might still be preserved. Time will tell. But
the terrorist government,
why would you? Well, I don't know. They're going to try to extract something, but are they really independent to begin with? Are they really autonomous? That's the question. Are they? Because I think, if I recall, there was this little scene in Riyadh where Julani was somehow presented and he had to kiss the rings of who.
Yes.
This picture speaks volume to me. So what margin of maneuver does he have?
Yes.
I don't think that much.
Yes. I got to be honest, man. Russian policy is confusing to me sometimes. Because to me, look, I agree with you. If you save somebody's ass, you have influence.
Yeah, I own that ass. That's right.
Or you own that ass. Fair enough. You own that ass. The ass is yours, right?
Thank you.
And then you're not going to exert influence on that ass when that ass is doing stuff that is not in your best interest or that ass's best interest.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
And we're still talking about thousands of lives lost and billions of dollars, not rubles, dollars in dollar value, wasted, essentially, with no certainty that your bases will be preserved, which is really what the key interest is all about for Russia, is conserving those two bases.
Do you see?
Because your whole African policy, your whole projection into African heavily relies on conserving those two bases in Syria. I mean, there are plan Bs, if not plan Cs, but if let's be serious, I mean, those deep water ports, Tarriffs, and most importantly, the air base in Nemin, this is really like a trump card, no pun intended. So why would you put yourself in a situation where you might one day have to sit across from a bunch of, well, not a bunch, I mean, the terrorist organization? They're not even a government. I mean, there was no election. Right. They are self-proclaimed. In order to try to persuade those people would depend on Turkish support and American support to make life easier for you. I mean, Africa is what? Africa is the rare earths, is it's minerals, it's all kind of things. It's the battleground of the 21st century, along with the Arctic Circle. So this is huge. So why would you jeopardize, or endanger at the very least, your power projection capabilities by not doing what needs to be done to make sure Syria remains in your sphere of influence?
Yes, that's all I'm asking. Yes.
That's it.
Because
I'm just asking the question, but I guess the answer is in the question.
I guess that's
pretty simple to me.
Yeah, we're in full agreement.
So if it's a reputational risk that you are fearing, like I say, I mean, it doesn't really matter, like I say, for years now, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. They've decided that you have no place. You don't belong. You're not even a human being. I mean, Russophobia attests to that.
Donald Trump is calling what Putin is doing depraved in Ukraine as he allows the murder and starvation of Palestinians that we are paying.
Millions of people.
Yes. So I am trying to make the point of saying their propaganda is always going to be, Russia could save a baby, like literally go out and save a baby. And they would say,
they would find a way to call into question the motive of Russia doing so.
That's my point, right? It's like it can't be a concern, and I don't quite get why the Russian government doesn't get that. Do you see a turn on this where they're like, okay, maybe we need more influence? I mean, look, the Russian government did put out Sputnik and did put out RT. Both of those things have been heavily influential. I mean, that's part of the reason that Europe got rid of them, because
they have great successes. Absolutely. Fantastic operations.
Brazil, etc. So they do have their outlets where they can get their point of view across. Even in the States, I mean, there was one of the Congress members said more people are watching RT than watching CNN because nobody takes CNN seriously. I don't know. I don't know. I covered this. And so when I see like Syria falls, and I'm like, what the F? And then you tell me, yeah, Bashar al-Assad was moving in directions that was against Russian interests. And it's like, but they saved his ass.
Not Bashar himself. Bashar was surrounded by people at the National Security Bureau who basically swayed him into turning away somewhat from Russia. On a personal level, he always invested in Russia, but at the level of the country that he headed, that stopped translating into concrete reality around 2020.
Yeah, but the only thing that matters is on the level of
when the victory was within reach, mind you. Yeah. The only thing left to do was to obliterate Idlib, and that would have been the end of it. And we might still be talking about Assadist Syria today.
Yeah,
but by freezing front lines and allowing those people to regroup, juxtaposing it was then the Ukraine conflict starting and the porosity between Idlib and Kiev, with the Kievian intelligence coming and to train the would-be next ruler of Damascus in the art of drones. Yeah, that made but in the end, I mean, there was a lot of even open clashes between Syrian officers and Russian officers. Somehow it was a very insidious process. Russia tried to do the same thing with the Syrian army and to initiate them to the drone. And the Syrian refused because they were under orders to basically don't trust the Russians.
That is deeply
Russians are not part of the axis of resistance. They are not from the region.
Deeply frustrating.
And I guess the writing was on the wall, because when Russian companies came, basically the contract went to local trade families. You know, they resumed basically what they had been doing before, all along. So, you know, the Chinese, they came in, they smelled it, they saw what was happening with the Russians, and somehow they learned the lesson not to get involved that much. You know, and actually in Damascus, I recall that they were lamenting that China was not investing further, because China was cognizant of the pre-existing situation developing between the Syrian national security apparatus and the Russian military presence there. And so they started taking notes, I guess, and they decided that maybe it might not be the right moment to invest anything.
I know this is deeply frustrating to hear. Deeply frustrating to hear. Because to me, and maybe I look at it, I guess, like a game of civilization or chess, that these are, let's say, pieces on a geopolitical board that are important to keep in a corner. And when they fall, it allows, let's say, capabilities that weren't there prior before the fall. Like Israel could have never attacked Iran without Syria falling and collapsing. And Turkey, where Erdogan is a snake, has a large amount of control over an area that, as you point out, Russia wants to maintain a military bases. Okay, but those bases aren't safe. Like Erdogan can't be trusted. And so it's just deeply depressing. I know these countries look at themselves as countries, fair enough. I look at them as countries, yes, but also there's a larger geopolitical reality that they need to face if they want to maintain their own integrity as states. And
well, I guess what we're trying to we're dancing around the subject, but some people might say that Russia needs to be a little bit more devious.
Hard ass, yes.
Well, you got to fight fire with fire, right? I mean, you can't just be showing up like in your communion robe, you know, to a hell's bell, whatever, hell's party, right? You got to be devoured. So you got to be vicious. You got to be twisted. You got to, you know, don't take the gloves off, man. Yeah, I agree with you. No, but that's true.
But you guys.
But that's part of the. I think again, it's part of the Russian political culture, and orthodoxy plays a big role in this. The sense of honor, the sense of you know, not striking an enemy while it's down. You know.
Oh, don't tell me that.
Sometimes you got to be. Well, I mean, there's a little bit of that, I think. You know, we should not dismiss it right out of hand.
Well, Iran was like, well, we're fighting a moral war. It's like, what? Fighting a moral war?
Yeah, exactly. Moral war. Yeah.
There is something, though, that you mentioned that I think is fascinating. You said during the USSR or Soviet Union, there was an ideology. And the goal was to spread that ideology where you got the West versus the East in regard to
it spread it, and it structures also what you're doing, because everybody is on the same page. I mean, literally, right? So there's no contestation. You had political commissars who were always accompanying. You saw the movie Red October, right?
Yes.
So you have the Soviet commander of the submarine, and he's flanked by a political officer who's there, who examines everything that he writes, but that he connotes on his registers, on his carnet bord. Who's there when he talks to the crew, and everything has to be ideologically aligned with part.
Something. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm interrupting you. But
that's that's all I had to say. But it might have been taken to maybe a step too far. But with a structuring ideology you can accomplish much more than just like a simple manager.
But there does seem to be something like that being created. Like, and
Like what?
It's an opposition. Like, so for example, the US, the way it operates, it's far more
I know where
clear.
you're going here. You're saying that so the new prevailing ideology basically is in opposition as to what's being imposed by the globalist.
Exactly. It's
for
like
lack of a better
we are
word.
a hegemonic government, meaning we want hegemonic control of the globe. And you get Russia, China, Iran, many of these states in Africa saying, well, look, we are not for hegemonic control. We want multipolarity. We want governments to be sovereign. We want to engage and work with those governments, whereas the US wants hegemonic control. And which
So
one
far,
do you
so good.
prefer? Yeah, that
But
seems to be.
I would submit that at some point you gotta be acting more than just being in reaction to something. You gotta propose something affirmative platform. I mean, somebody who basically runs for office in any country on the platform that is against what his rivals or in the race are proposing it's not going to be elected. You got to be out there promoting something, proposing something. And I don't get the feel that we have something that's articulated in that sense.
Yeah. It seems like it's naturally occurring, not intentionally occurring, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost like they're coming around to the idea. I mean, BRICS is a really good example. It's like, okay, we're going to come together with these countries. We have differences in these countries, but we're going to get fair exchange, fair deal. It's not going to be this hegemonic control where you're being influenced by the West. And that argument seems to be getting louder in the way that the argument is being made, with many countries agreeing with that argument, saying we need to ditch the dollar, we need to come up with something else, et cetera, et cetera. It does seem.
Yeah, but they don't want to come up with something else, and they've been actually painstakingly trying to maybe even reassure the American that this is not the case, that there's not going to be a BRICS currency. The Americans are convinced, in their mindset, the Americans are victim of their own preconceived perception of things, is that BRICS is going to come up with a currency to rival the US dollar. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's going to be a basket of currency. But it's interesting and very revealing that America would think that there's a BRICS currency. I mean, yeah.
America's right. America's right on this. I don't believe BRICS. Look, I'm not against it. I'm just pointing out that America's like, okay, you're trying to subvert the use of the dollar. Putin has made speeches talking about this. Putin made this speech one day where he said America created $10 trillion out of thin air and went to war with nothing. Like, basically, when you have the capability of the main currency and you could just conjure money up, what does that mean? Like, in the context of military, what does it mean in the context of society, where everybody else can't do that? Like, Russia can't just say, we're just going to conjure up $10 trillion. You can't do that. Nobody else can do that. And he's like, that is a weapon. Like, in and of itself, beyond all military hardware and everything else, that is a weapon. And that is a weapon that needs to be mitigated. I know BRICS is saying, look, we're not challenge the dollar. We're not trying to do any of this stuff. Even if it's a basket of currencies is still almost de facto a currency. I'm not against it. I'm just saying it is. I think BRICS is full of shit.
Well, I guess my point was that the US propaganda machine actually, they stated that there was a BRICS currency, as if there was like a sui generis out of thin air, a new currency composed of and backed by gold bullions from all the countries that belong into BRICS. But it's not the case.
Yeah.
But the fact that the American propaganda would actually, for internal purposes, I guess, would promote this notion, is interesting in and of itself, because it shows that this to them in terms of power relation, vis-a-vis one another, you would have to come up with a rival currency, not unlike what we've seen in the European Union.
Right.
But to be balanced here, that's exactly what I think the BRICS members don't want to do, because they're saying that the euro is essentially captive to the dollar and dependent on its fortunes in that sense, in its potentiality to depreciate. The euro is not worth really. I mean, it's an abstract notion. So what I'm saying is, by extension, they also do not want to recreate a form of a Soviet Union type of structure, and or what you would see in the European Union today, which is almost like a reversed version of the old Soviet Union in Europe, with a lot of countries that are essentially captive from a non-elected, non-legitimate center. So this is something they really want to stay away from. That's why you're not going to see, and Putin said that much in his last final speech in Kazan. He said, we will not have an overarching bureaucracy, a BRICS bureaucracy. That's not going to happen. The echelon of relations between BRICS members will remain nation state to nation state.
Right, which is an argument that they're making to the rest of the world also.
Yeah.
I agree with you with the euro.
But it's a sensible argument.
Yeah. Which is my point about spreading an ideology, even if they're not doing it heavy-handedly. The U.S., in the Soviet Union, the U.S. had a soothing argument of, hey, we're love and light, we're freedom, look at our big supermarkets, we're fantastic, we're America, we don't believe in overthrowing governments, we're not heavy-handed. This was the propaganda that they put out, etc. That argument doesn't work today. That argument is more like we are hedging.
Well, I would go further than that. Actually, the propaganda was backed by a measure of reality, because at the time, there was no neoliberal policies. It was good old traditional capitalism. So anybody with hard work could somewhat feed his own family and have a house and provide, in other words, right?
Yes.
Whereas today, you don't really have that. Today, you have a banking cartel that essentially sucks all the hard-earned dollars from the not just the American population, but I would say the collective West population, because Europe, as we've seen last week again, is completely being sucked dry by the US. Yes, they're trying to delay, I guess, their demise, or the demise of their economy, which does not produce anything anymore. But my point is, essentially back in the days, there was a sense of the American dream that somewhat still sounded, if you work hard, you make it. You'll find a bank. Today, the American dream does not, that has a lot of, it's it's not quite there anymore.
And
a lot of TikTok videos are attesting to it. People talking in their car about not being able to pay, for the most basic foodstuff, or even though they burden themselves with tens of thousands of dollars in debt to go to school, they play by the book, they play by the social contract norms that were imposed onto them, and in the end, they find themselves in the late 20s, early 30s, and for a big portion of the population that age, they cannot even contemplate getting a mortgage, getting health insurance, just basic stuff. I mean, which back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s even was still, a reality. Even some would say even to the mid 90s, everything started changing in the late 1990s.
Naked hegemony, that too. Like this idea of
the whole West, the whole collective West is facing the same problem. All their youths are
but that's
depressed.
If you are in a different country and the United States is trying to tell your country what you should and shouldn't do, that sucks. Look at what we're doing to Brazil. It's like, we don't like you going after Bolsonaro, and so we're going to put tariffs on your country. Okay, who the F are you? We don't like Iran because, they're Iran. This missile stuff is just a stalking horse. I'm saying that is a crappy argument that is being made today openly by the U.S. that you must use our dollar. We will intervene into your country when we want to intervene.
It's a matter of national security. The dollar as a reserve currency is a matter of, it's the core, the nuclear core of America's ability to project power.
I know, but how the hell?
So there might not be a BRICS currency per se, but the very fact that those countries are slowly but surely opting out of trading in dollars, meaning that the dollar supply is shrinking, meaning there's less and less faith in the dollar. Nobody wants to buy treasury bonds. That's why we have this tug of war between Trump and Powell for the last 6 months. Because Powell does not want to adjust the interest rate. Yes,
Right.
because he
Lower
wants,
interest rate.
to maintain the, yeah. Whereas Trump needs to lower the interest rate because he wants the world to buy more treasury bonds. But at the same time, the president of the chairman of the Fed, he has responsibility to the cartel that he represents. And the idea is, if we increase too much the interest rate, yes, we're gonna get more money to make the federal government functions and to finance all the wars. But we cannot, go too drastically one direction or the other. So this is on this particular point. Trump needs fresh money to refinance the debt, the U.S. debt, which is almost like a yearly struggle. Some countries it's more like every 3 or 4 or 5 years they have to refinance their debt. France is in this situation right now. In the US, it's every year that they have to find fresh money to to finance their activities. And in order to do so, you need to have an interest rate that allows you to basically have people producing, having people buying funds, treasury bonds, which in exchange, because owing to the interest rate, allows for money to be created out of thin air.
Yes.
But Powell doesn't want to tinker too much. It's a very delicate system. Otherwise, you might run the chance of blowing apart the whole scam, which is what it is. It's a scam, right? So we'll see if Powell gets taken out and is replaced by someone more malleable. That might actually be long-term a good thing for the rest of the world. We'll see what happens.
President doesn't control the Federal Reserve. He doesn't. If he did, Powell would have been out by now.
Yes, but I don't know. I'm not so sure about this because if you look at the evolution of on this particular issue of the interest rate, and by extension, the guy in charge of the Fed right now, and Trump has 3.5 years to go. He doesn't want to be a political lame duck, so he has to be able to, find the money. He has to find fresh money to keep functioning.
Yeah.
And he has adopted. We know now. We can see with the BBB, he's obviously decided to forego spending on federal spending. So we need to go into more debt so I can finance my wonderful economy. And in so doing, I need to have like a free hand to do so. And so if I need to adjust the interest rate to create this funny money, monopoly money, then the chairman of the Fed should appear. This is this is where it's at now. But so we'll see what happens. But I will put a couple of dollars on Powell being forced out.
I will take your money. My prognostication is damn good. When Sarah was on the show, and Sarah made that bet.
Okay,
we'll see. Taking her cash. I'm telling you, Jerome Powell doesn't care one iota what Trump says. Trump has no power.
No, he doesn't. That's why he has to go.
Short of Powell just not waking up one morning. He's not going anywhere unless Trump has an assassin that's going to pull it in Powell. Okay, fair enough. Let's see. I mark this down. Mark this down. When Powell was with Trump the other day, and Trump came up with this thing and got it wrong, Powell was so just annoyed. Like, when you see European leaders, you see them cowering before daddy. Powell didn't care at all. In fact, Powell was like, "You're wrong. On camera, you're wrong. You just got this wrong." He is a capitalist in an oligarch society with a bunch of other capitalists, with him being the head. He does not.
Well, I don't know if he's a capitalist. Because capitalist is something else in my playbook. Those guys, it's something else. No, it's a plutocracy, right?
Yes.
It's a plutocratic model. So plutocracy does not allow for talent to emerge and the free market to do what it needs to do to weed out the mediocres and promote real innovative, hardworking ones. I mean, the U.S. economy is anything but that. But it might have been this in the 1960s, 70s, yes. But from the moment they started outsourcing all the industrial base and relying on financial instruments to finance the economy, we stepped into something else. There's some kind of financial alchemy that has no bearing to good old capitalism of old.
I'm just saying Powell is the head oligarch And whether he got there through skill,
He's the
talent, or
fiduciary
otherwise.
agent. That's what I call
Yeah.
him, fiduciary agent. Yes.
But I'm saying
He
that
represents.
fiduciary agent doesn't
Yes.
care all that much what the president thinks, and has a certain amount of contempt for him that you can see anytime they're in close proximity. It's not like the European leaders where they're cowering before Trump. It's not like some of these other people who cower before Trump. Powell he doesn't care. He hasn't shown that he cares one iota what Trump thinks about it.
Well, I think he fears more his employers than Trump. Yeah, if that's what you mean. I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. He knows to whom he owes his job. Yeah. But in the end, it depends. It depends. I mean, Trump sees himself as some kind of 21st century incarnation of Andrew Jackson.
He can see himself however he wants.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Trump can see himself whatever he wants.
Yes. Because it's really like it's between a rock and a hard place. You need to keep financing your overseas operation, right?
Yeah.
So you need to create more debt to do so, but you don't want to cheapen the dollar to such a degree that nobody wants to buy treasury bonds anymore.
Right.
So something's got to give at some point.
Is there a difference between a basket of currencies versus making a currency? In real terms, I know there's a difference factually, but it's kind of like, is there a difference between Ukraine joining NATO versus NATO training, arming, equipping, all of the stuff with Ukraine? Like, those things are technically different, but in reality, they're the same. And I'm saying, is the same thing true with the basket of currency?
Yeah, I don't think the question has to be asked in that from that perspective. I think it's more an issue of which one between the two occupies the most significant volume in world trade. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
So reserve currency, by definition, there's consensus. There's a benevolent use of this world currency. No, even though, because we call the dollar as a reserve currency, we might recall the exorbitant privilege, right?
Right.
So, but this was out of, coming out of World War II. So there was a political legitimacy, military legitimacy. America produced 50% of what the world needed in 1945. So you could not go against, those were hardcore economic facts, right? It was an industrial powerhouse, military powerhouse, and that translated into political powerhouse.
Yeah.
But today this is a hollow shell of that. And it's simultaneously reflected in extremely aggressive policies, tariff policies, and infringement on other countries' sovereignty. So that basket of currency looks very appealable to those countries who are trying to emancipate themselves from that. Exactly. And so to the extent they can, preserve their sovereignty over the long run by decoupling from the US dollar, they will do so. It will be a very subtle movement, a long-term, steady drip, drip, drip. But ultimately it will reach a critical point where, the American dollars as a currency, as a world reserve currency, will cease to exist. And with it, America's capabilities to project military power, because if nobody buys your treasury bonds, nobody trusts your economy. Nobody trusts your, the viability of your economic system and the dollar representing it. There's no money to be made in terms of investing in this purchase. So then the gig is up. And so you cannot finance your bases. You have to close your bases. You have to repatriate tens of thousands of US soldiers, close bases all around the world, decommission aircraft carriers, and regroup to make sure that the infection does not reach Washington D.C. Because essentially, if you've read the trilogy of books, Blowback, Nemesis.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh God, he's so good. Yeah. Chalmers Johnson, I believe.
Johnson. Yeah. So that's the problem. Imperial overstretch leads to domestic entropy, and this is what we might see in America. American empire is no different than all the empires that preceded it. We see it with the Soviet Union. When the imperial blowback happened, look at what happened in Moscow and Russia proper for 10 years. It was a wild, wild west, and the country almost disappeared. When the Roman Empire collapsed, same thing. I mean, they sacked Rome. The barbarian came into Rome and sacked it. And we're seeing a lot of the things we saw back in Rome, since America likes to compare itself to modern Rome. You can see, for instance, that there's a regain now of signing up, from Americans per se, but as opposed to the woke ideology. But more and more, we see a lot of people being promised citizenship if they enroll, right? So they are using immigrants to go fight their wars. We saw that at the time in the latter days of Rome. We saw the same thing. A lot of barbarians became Roman generals themselves. So they learned everything that needed to be learned about Roman military tactics and so on. And they identified the weaknesses. And when the center was too weak, then those generals basically took it upon themselves to try to basically go for the kill, go for the final death blow.
I guess this is my argument that I'm making with Russia, China, etc. That when you have this kind of naked, I don't want to call it authoritarianism, but this kind of naked empire, as opposed to the soft hand of empire, that countries recoil from it. Like the behavior of the United States, either under Joe Biden or under Donald Trump, especially under Donald Trump, is outrageous. And it's screwing with this notion of sovereignty in a way that's like, for example, if I have a boss, and my boss says, hey, Jamal, can you please blow off your lunch because we have extra work that we need to do? He's asking me, but really he's telling me. But I could accept under my ego that I'm being asked, even though I'm not really being asked. It's another thing to say, hey, I need you to blow off your lunch. You're not doing so-and-so. Go do this. Okay, now you're impinging upon my ego. And you're impinging upon me as a human being and the way I feel about my own autonomy as a person. When you have this naked hegemony that is being applied, or this naked primacy applied to all of these other nations, it doesn't fly. It doesn't sit well. How are you telling Brazil that its prosecutor, part of his legal system, can't operate in its own country? That's outrageous. And it's not going to be accepted by Brazil. Same thing with Russia, same thing with China, same thing with India, same thing with Indonesia, et cetera. By the way, he's going after BRICS nations intentionally because of this whole threat to the dollar. I'm trying to point out, though, that in the old days, in the 70s and 80s, you can make that argument of, well, the United States is love and light and we're freedom. Today, that is not the argument that we make. We make the argument of we need to remain the hegemon. We need to be the prime mover and shaker in the world. It is rules-based order. Our rules, you follow our rules. Those are two very different arguments. Russia is making the alternate argument. China is making the alternate argument, saying, hey, we just want to do business. We're not going to affect what you do in your own countries. We're not going to be this heavy-handed thing. We believe in this kind of united thing under law, et cetera. That is the way that they're seemingly contesting this kind of naked hegemony that the United States is effectively morphed into. I mean, is that enough, though?
Well, it's going to have to be enough, I guess, for the time being. It seems to be working pretty well because, well, I mean, you just have to basically observe what they do and act accordingly.
Yeah.
I guess what we're trying to, if we were to summarize the discussion we're having, it's do you want to be like on the reactive as opposed to proactive? But sometimes, if you read Sun Tzu, you have to allow your enemy to make the mistakes. Or it's Napoleon who used to say, Napoleon. But it's the same as there are ramifications between Sun Tzu and Napoleon. And Napoleon used to say, whatever you do, don't interfere when your enemy is making a mistake.
Yeah,
exactly. And so I think those are Oriental cultures also. You have to always keep that in mind. So they have a completely different approach about things and about the time. They think in long term, and they don't deviate. They don't allow emotional outburst to dictate the play of the day, or the play of the week, or the play of the next 10 years. You have to stay true to your plan, You may have a variation of that one plan, but by and large, you reach a consensus on an approach, and you stick to that approach. And don't try to overextend yourself. Russia has gone that way before, and with the results that we know. So it's still pretty fresh, in the collective memory. It's only 30 years. It's yesterday. So a lot of those people who lived back in those days are still alive today, although they are in their 70s, 80s now, but they're still there. So that's something that, we're likely to keep seeing. But yeah, more NGOs, I don't think would. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, they may come up with their own set of criteria to, decide, whether or not it's worth, spending a little bit of money here or there. But yeah, in the end, I think, you should not completely close yourself to the idea of, borrowing a page from your adversary, your rival, your strategic rival playbook, which I'm sure the Russian can do very well, as you mentioned with RT and Sputnik.
Yeah, but that's what NGOs are subversive. Like NGOs, you don't know they exist.
Oh, no, you cannot actually. No, I would say, but you have to keep being overt. Be overt. Yeah. Why would you have to hide something? The moment the perception is that you are advancing, surreptitiously, that's when the problem begins to emerge.
Seriously, because, you really believe?
Yeah, it can be exploited. Yeah, I believe that you can just promote what defines you. I mean, what's wrong with that? Openly, what's the problem? Transparency, because if your model is better, at least at this conjuncture in history, then promote that model. Believe in it. Assume it. Own up.
You're too good of a person, and I think I'm horrible as a person. If that, maybe.
Well, it's not a matter of being good or not good. It's a matter of what other people are gonna think if they remotely get a sense that you're hiding something from them. See, that's the thing.
The United States spent 90% of the money going into Ukrainian media. They didn't advertise that they were coming from the United States. They just did it with this idea that this is just journalism. This is just us telling the truth.
And what did they promote in the school books? And I've seen some of those school books.
I'm just
Russia bad. Russia responsible for everything under the sun.
Yes, and think of Europe right now, where Europe is going with all of this Russophobia and everything else. Where do you think that came from? They were reporting that stuff.
Yeah, I know.
News. I'm saying it worked.
What I'm saying is they don't try to hide their message. Their message is right in the open. Well, and then whatever you might be thinking on the other side of the curtain, that's on you. But as far as the people we're trying to reach, we're not going to try to hide or conceal or mitigate or, we mean to say.
Hiding and concealing, because they're promoting it as if it's independent. That's what I'm getting at. This is not overt. This is very subversive in the way that they're promoting this stuff. They're promoting this stuff like this is just news. It's not just news. It's actually coming from state media, where the state itself is paid.
No, I understand. I'm talking about the nature of the message. What I guess we're just differing on technicalities here. What you are alluding to is trying to promote a message using the exact the exact reality of the message, of the reality of the message that you want to convey.
Right,
that's subversive.
Coming from the source.
But those guys, they're basically promoting a message that is in and of itself the end result of the process, which is Russia bad, we good.
I get that. Yeah. But if the British government came out and says, we have propaganda, and we want to give you that propaganda, that is very different than here's an independent source that is being paid by the British government that you don't know is being paid by the British government. They're saying, this is just our point of view. Those are different things. You can interrogate.
Oh, you're talking about the donors. You're talking about the NGOs, as conduit from public money. Yeah, sure, yeah. But I mean, but everybody knows that. I don't think I would assume a lot of people have figured that out by now. That lots of those NGOs are financed by public funding and by governments. Of course, yes. That's the first thing you do actually when you're trying to identify exactly what kind of outfit this such and such organization is really all about. You go to their website and you go to About Us, our donors, and then you know immediately what you're dealing with.
Most people don't know that. I'm telling you, most people don't know that. Like when most people see a news report from, let's say they're online, and it's okay, this independent person is saying this. They don't know that there's an NGO paying that guy to say that. It's subversive.
Well, maybe we should promote, certain diligence, and repeat until people, figure it out. I mean, for those who want to know, because there will always be people who don't really care about those type of things. But to the extent there are some people who are interested in finding out about the intricacies of, propaganda wars, they should always go on the website of the outfit and go under the, the tab, who we are and our donors, and then you'll know. Then you do a research on the list of donors that's listed.
I feel horrible making this argument. I feel horrible making this argument. Because
I know, but people are lazy these days. That's the problem. But we have to somewhat urge them to do those type of things. Because how can the world make any sense to you if you don't do a modicum of research, right? You have to go get the information behind the information.
Yeah, but the media in the United States is a 5-minute memory. I can show you articles.
Oh, well, you're not going to get that from the US media. It's going to be from people, who have their own independent podcast like you.
Yeah.
I don't think the networks are going to be advocating for research,
to me, this is like
to Mr. and Mrs. America on prime time, right before Monday Night Football.
CNN at this point has admitted that, hey, it seems like the Russian is really advancing, but they're taking massive casualties. That's their go-to.
Yeah.
Like their go-to is always the Russian hordes that are taking millions and millions of casualties to get inches of territory. It's like, okay, dude, come on, man. Like the cemeteries. Media Zona doesn't even go with that, but that's the way they talk about it. It's just insane. Two stories before I let you go, and I'm sorry, we've talked about this for a while. Thank you for this. I appreciate this conversation. I've enjoyed it actually. The Austria. I have an Austrian ex, and she often proudly tells me, well, the Russians have said that we've been fantastic because we have not been involved in any of these conflicts, and we are neutral and independent by our constitution. And now you have sounds coming out of Austria saying, maybe we don't want to be independent. Maybe we want to join NATO. Maybe we want to get back involved. And Maria Zakharova came out with a statement. First of all, hey, boo. If you know her, tell her, say, hey, boo. If, you want to make an honest woman out of you, I'm right here. But she comes out and points out, I would like to remind Minister that modern Austria did not inherit neutrality from Austria-Hungary, and even less from Nazi Germany after I think this is Anschluss in 1938. The document for the restoration sovereignty was a state.
Oh, the Anschluss. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Anschluss. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
The treaty was signed.
I thought you were referring to NABU, this hollow shell of an agency, anti-corruption agency in Ukraine, like NABU.
No, I just
or the planet NABU. From Star Wars.
No, that's just me butchering the term.
Anschluss, yes.
1955 by the USSR, Great Britain, the USA, France. It was preceded by the Moscow Memorandum of April the same year, which stipulated Austria's commitment to eternal neutrality. Eternal neutrality. Eternal. It's like the world can fall apart and your ass is going to remain neutral. Do you know how bad you have to F up for you to be neutral forever, and that all of us agreed to your neutrality? Now, I would argue that Germany should have also gone through that, but okay, fair enough. It didn't happen that way. The US wanted to use Germany as a battering ram. What is the point of view of Russia that Austria is now making these sounds of, hey, maybe we don't want to be neutral anymore?
Well, I think it's par for the course. We've seen it with Finland and Sweden. Recently, they were somewhat neutral and they were sharing borders. I mean, for Finland, sharing borders with Russia.
Yes.
And out of the blue, they decide that their interest lies in joining NATO, which is a catastrophe, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So it's just one more instance of basically sovereignty. Since you were talking about sovereignty, Switzerland also same thing. I mean, they have a special agreement with the EU. They try to forcefully stay out of the EU, but they have very strong partnership. like the banking secrets of Switzerland, used to define that country. It's not even in existence anymore. So all those things it's like a streamlining process. So you cannot not be into NATO, in other words, today. You have to somehow be into NATO no matter what, because everybody else is doing it. That's the right thing to do, I guess. So Austria won't escape that. And besides, some of the people advocating for this in Austria, well, they are globalist agents. They are probably world economic agents, like in all the other countries. So they are very well funded. They occupy all the media. And when the election comes, even if they need a little push to get the electoral score needed to take control, that can be arranged. We've seen it in other countries. And then they will get the majority in parliament, and they will draft a law calling for some kind of rapprochement with NATO. It will be implemented, bit by bit, but ultimately the aims will be accomplished. This is just part for the course.
They're not a fan of Ukrainians. I will tell you that, population-wise.
At the level of the population, of course, it's always different, no matter what country we're talking about, for that matter. Yeah, but I'm talking about the government, the legal government, for lack of a better word.
What is, from your point of view, what is the Russian response to this? I mean, are they concerned? Do they look at Europe and think, okay, Europe will get eaten alive if they got into a war with us? Is it, from my point of view, Russia was not really overly...
I don't think they think in terms of they're going to be eaten alive if we go to war. I think they don't want any war. Nobody wants war. That's a zero-sum game.
That's not true.
All those countries are being pushed against their will into what could be a cataclysmic conflict. That's the problem. And I'm sure in Moscow they're extremely worried about it, because, I mean, look at the exchange between Medvedev and Trump this week. It's crazy. Can you imagine 30 years ago, Reagan and Gorbachev, or let's go back before Gorbachev, Andropov or Chernenko talking to Reagan like this, and vice versa?
No.
It's crazy.
No.
We're branding terms like the dead man switch, the Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's insane. It is insane.
Insane.
I agree with you. It's insane. I guess my thing is, though, but there are people who want war. The United States looks as war, especially with proxies, as their means of maintaining some level.
Well, the banking cartel, that runs the United States, yes.
Well,
and the collective West, for that matter, yes.
Yeah,
they want war, yes.
And the people who have in their mind about Western exceptionalism.
That's
and
right.
Looking at other countries.
Well, usually they're the same, huh? I mean, because the Western exceptionalism it's a cover story to basically for the banking cartel to accaparate themselves all the resources first in Russia and ultimately in China, right?
No, Arnaud,
they cannot afford.
They do believe.
Well, yeah, I get some of them do. Some of them are very cynical about it, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. But I see what you mean. This is what they're going to promote. Exceptionalism, yes.
From the Russian point of view, though, how do they look at it? Are they looking at it as we need to prepare for war, in which case we believe that they are going to be stupid enough?
Well, they are preparing for war because, as Napoleon, sorry to quote him again, used to say, if you want peace, you have to prepare for war.
Yeah.
And the problem is when the Americans talk about peace through strength, that means that we are somewhat looking at an escalation on both sides.
Right.
Nobody wants to budge. And I don't know who said, I think it was John Mersheimer yesterday on the podcast. I don't know to whom he was talking, but he said, the problem is the US does not want to concede defeat in Ukraine. This is where we are right now.
Correct. It's too humiliating. It's like, I think I did this video saying Trump is at the precipice. Because at some point, either you have to say we lost and we need to somehow back away, either if it's a face-saving maneuver or what, or you will keep going. And where's that point where it becomes kinetic?
Yeah, but the problem with Trump is he's got this Epstein albatross around his neck. That's the problem. And, he's desperate to find some kind of diversion to say, hey, look over there, forget about it. Look over there, look.
You think war is going to be wag the dog like Bill Clinton, where Bill Clinton was with Monica Lewinsky?
Well, that's a classic of the genre. Yeah. What do you do when you're in difficulty internally? You create a war.
Oh, this is going to be another.
Remember the first 8 months. The first 8 months of the Bush Junior term in 2001. It was a disaster. We had the Unan Island spy plane debacle. Powell had to explain to the subtlety of the Chinese culture of not losing face, rather than demanding immediately the return of our plane. It's like it doesn't work like this, man. So it was one after the other, blunder after blunder, until 9/11 happened. And after 9/11, the guys' approval ratings were in the 80s, and then they never, So there you go.
Well, they trashed pretty quickly, especially by the time he got to 2000. He was toast. I mean, he was in like 30% approval rating as a president.
Well, he was elected in November 2000. He got into office in January 2001. So from January 2001 to September 11th, his administration was a joke. It was a joke.
I think 2003, the war started in 2003. It was at the point where he put up the big sign that says "Mission Complete," and then
he was riding high back then. Yeah. No, he was riding high. Yes, he was riding high. He was like his father in '92. He was at 70%.
By the time he gave it over to Obama, his rating was in the 30%.
Yeah, because you had the crash of September 29th, 2008.
Yep. But he was also failing in Iraq when you had all of these groups that he couldn't.
Yeah, those body bags coming and this trickling flow of So it was not mission accomplished. And then there was the Dulfer report, which showed that the WMD was a hoax.
I want to show you.
You should have said you should have said one term, and go out in the sunset, and leave the mess to his successor. Yeah.
I want Russia prepared to win.
But if you remember, he was reelected triumphantly in 2004. I mean, sure, they brought up this flip-flopping from Kerry,
Right.
But he won all the swing states. I mean, we had the Supreme Court debacle with the Chad, remember in 2000. But in 2004, I mean, there was no contest. Bush won it almost in a landslide. Never missed
all
a
of these
beat.
things reflect the decline of America. Nobody that incompetent should ever be able to get into office, and yet they're there. They're there.
Well, the Bush were a dynasty, to be sure. Huh? So he was just part of the dynasty. That's what he wrote the dynastic name.
Yeah.
Going back to the grandfather and then his own father. And if it hadn't been for Trump, Jeb Bush might have been elected in 2016.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, both are
what
bad.
A prospect.
To me, all of this.
No, I know. I'm just saying that America is turning into a dynastic system now. It's crazy. It's everything what America was supposed to be founded upon. Meaning the rule of at least the pretense of a choice, as opposed to dynastic systems. And 200 years later, because it's already 20 years ago, right? So less than 250 years after the founding, then we're back where we started. We have dynastic systems in the US. The Kerrys, the Bushes, the Clintons. It's crazy.
This is degradation, though. Like, this is indicative of failure and decline. This is not success. In fact, I think all of these things are canaries in the coal mine. Losing in Ukraine, losing in regards to the tariff war with China, Trump getting elected, Joe Biden getting elected, George Bush getting elected. Obama had a certain level of competence, even though he was still a maniac. Like, this is not indicative of success. These are indicative of your empire is under decline. And I would say Trump is the highest expression of trying to make themselves feel good. It's like, for example, if you're an American, you can look on Twitter and you can see China building high-speed rail. We've been trying to build partially high-speed rail in Canada, California for like 16 years. China's putting that stuff up like hotcakes. You can see them building buildings. You can look at their cities and see what those cities look like. Those things look like they're out of the future. You can look at China, Russia with these kind of space.
Well, that's talking about soft power. That's soft power right there.
Yeah, it is. But
when you get a guys like that TikToker or that YouTuber, I forgot his name, Slider.
She's so adorable.
I Slider something.
Yeah.
But when this guy goes to China and publishes videos,
I see Speed, I think his name, and he goes.
Yes, that's it. That's right. Well, that's huge. That's
who does Russia also, where she goes all of these different points in Russia, shows the cities, shows the subways. This is what we're doing. That stuff, you're right, it's soft power. You can see your military getting trashed, and you may want let's say, a carnival barker to tell you how awesome you are, despite the decline. It tells you, hey, these tariffs are great, even though they're raising the money that you spend. It's a tax increase. Like, it's almost like Trump is the highest expression of self-delusion in the context of that decline. That's the way I see him, anyway. He's like just ridiculous.
Well, it's the words that come out of his mouth sound hollow. I mean, and God knows Trump is a great believer in the American experiment. Let's call it this way. But the reality is completely opposite to what he says today, and it just seems like there's such a cognitive dissonance in that sense, because people have eyes to see, and they can see also now what China is turned into from an agrarian society 40 years ago through the Deng Xiaoping revolution, and they lifted 800 million people out of abject poverty. They have gleaming high-tech cities, but why? Because they are reinvesting all their trade surpluses, into their people. They invest into their people. But so soon the question is going to be in America, why isn't our government investing in us as opposed to investing in losing position abroad all the time with the same insiders lining up their pockets?
Yeah. But see, if you're the shining city on a hill and you see your country declining and you don't know why, like, that's rough, especially when you see somebody like Trump saying, hey, we're great, we're awesome, we're winning.
Yeah, but they cannot get rid of this. This is and that's somehow, this is actually it might just turn out to be the instrument that will bring America to a dead end, because this shining city on the hill trope has to go.
Yeah,
it has to go.
I want you to see.
You've had a good run on this, but now you have to revise everything. You have to completely retool the messaging. But how do you do that? When you've been drunk on power for so long, almost from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. Like, there's no room in our political space for that question.
I don't think they have the political culture-wise tools to come up with an alternative.
You need
to define a new language, a new perception of oneself.
You must understand, we're an oligarchical country, and they treat that feature as if we're fish in water, meaning they act as if this kind of principle of oligarchs that run this country, it's not an actual principle of the country, that we're just fishes in water in a non-biased system, when the bias always goes in one particular direction. And so in a political space, there's no room for that. All of these people are either rich, or all of these people are being paid by people who are rich to enact certain policies and put out certain propaganda with a media organization that effectively trumpets the same capitalist talking points. It is hard to change it when the very basis of the system is the problem itself. So I don't have an answer for that. It seems like it has to collapse before you can do anything different. Yeah.
Yes. That's going to be a very dangerous, not only in America, but for the rest of the world. Because when a country the size of America, I'm not saying the size physically, just, what it represents, starts having internal strife, and the center is not holding anymore, we may see a kind of a fragmenting of the country with, state secedings, but it's still very, unstable as a process.
Arnaud, I have kept you way too long. I'm so sorry. I didn't even look at the clock. I was sitting here enjoying the conversation with you. I want to get to one last thing before I let you go. I'm sorry, because I said I was going to get to it. This right here, this destruction of, and I guess this kind of dovetails back to where we started. Again, you have my deepest apologies. I did not mean to keep you this long.
No, it's
I
okay.
was legit enjoying the conversation, and that's kind of what happened. This is Azerbaijan demolition of monument of Russian painter is an unfriendly act. You pointed out that the other country pulled up the grave of Russian soldiers, something that, again, from my point of view, is sacred. These guys, 80% of the Nazis that were killed on the Eastern Front. And so the notion that you are letting like immediate political strife ignore that sacred act is outrageous. What was the country that was doing this, that pulled up the Russian soldiers?
Ukraine was the mayor of Lvov. Yeah. And this, as the Istanbul third round of negotiation was ongoing, bearing on humanitarian issues. So the guy just comes out and says, I've taken the decision to dig out remains of Soviet soldiers, and they can use those remnants in the exchange of bodies between Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine, Kiev, as the center, does not have anything to say about that. I mean, was this guy disciplined by even the government, so-called government of Ukraine, for saying that, when it actually is a grave affront and it could actually jeopardize the talks? Yeah. On its face, I'm not saying they're committed to productive talks to begin with, but still, and the guy gets away with it. So yeah, so it shows that this sickness is really deep. Those people are sick. In other words, they are beyond redemption. When you start. But at the same time, I mean, look, the Ukrainian bodies that were 7,000 of them and change that were brought back into Ukraine. For most of them, the overwhelming majority, their families cannot even get to retrieve the bodies. Yeah. It's a struggle.
They're trying to call them deserters so they don't have to pay them.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the families know that the bodies of their dear one is more likely than not now back into the country, and they cannot even get access to the morgues to check.
Zelensky is under a lot of pressure. Do you think this does him in? I mean, the West seems to be grooming solution. I mean, they're doing.
It looks like it. Yes. Yeah, we just need to wait for the opportunity, the seminal event that will provoke the switch. But yeah, we're like in the ninth inning, and there's a guy in the bullpen, and he's ready to go. That's Zaluzhny. He appeared he did his Vogue photo shoot. That's usually the anti-chamber of something bigger. And yeah, but now we just need to find. So there's been this anti-corruption thing going on last week. European Union basically said they will stop with the 1.5 billion. Yeah, until this is somewhat situated and fixed up. We'll see. Are they gonna go with this? We even had one of the Rada MP, call him out to his face, saying, there's no amount of a green T-shirt that you can hide behind, to dissimulate what you have attempted to do. So people are getting bolder and bolder. That's if that's any indication. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. But the decision has been made. The decision has been made. That's to be sure. The Vogue is a big marker. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
They have fistfights in the Rada.
Ain't that amazing?
Yeah. Arnaud, man, I've appreciated this conversation. I've enjoyed this conversation. I'm sorry, I lost track of time. Usually I'm better when I have somebody else, a guest, where I'm immediately going to a guest. I didn't have one above you. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. I enjoy this immensely.
Thank you,
just for the audience to know, Arnaud Develay, he is an author, political analyst, international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. You have a fantastic rest of your day. I am sorry, one more time. Thank you for this.
No problem. Take care.
Be safe. All right. Yeah, I appreciate that conversation. I enjoyed that conversation. I just lost track. I'm sorry. Anytime I have like Sarah or somebody else where they're at that end point and I'm into the conversation, my attention to the clock, it's not as precise. I saw it up until the point where it was, I don't know, 8:45, I think. And then at that point it went abducted by aliens or something and went into a hole. I do want to show something before I go. I want to show the quality of our military leaders. This will terrify you. This is, you would think, an SNL skit or South Park skit. This is not a South Park skit. This is not an SNL skit. This is a real life person with a mind, in quotes, that is a leader of men, that is going to give you his take on world events as he's in uniform. I don't know if he thinks he's talking to children or he just has the mind of a child. I don't know which one it is. It is terrifying that this is the quality of our leadership. This right here, this is Major General Joe Val, U.S. Army in Japan. Listen to him give you a breakdown of, I guess you can call it geopolitics in a military sense. This is the way he thinks about the world.
Number one, no war. It'll be catastrophic economically across the world and also just on a personal human cost. No one wants that. So this is the most challenging time I've seen in my 32 years of active duty. The Japanese, who I work with each day, consider Japan is like Poland. The Philippines is like Romania. China is like Russia. Taiwan is Ukraine. That's where Japan sees their role to help prevent a conflict and defend their country. The greater threat to Japan's sovereignty is the People's Republic of China, particularly the People's Liberation Army. The People's Liberation Army would have to at least block, if not outright seize, some of those islands. Yonaguni, closest to Taiwan, about 100 kilometers from Taipei, to isolate Taiwan from an intervention by Western forces. The focus has shifted to the real problem today and tomorrow, which is protecting the sovereignty of Japan. And the foundation in this region has changed really to the PRC's unwarranted aggression.
Few points. Who is attacking Japan? Who is attacking Japan? Nobody. Nobody is attacking Japan. Let me go into this one more time because I want to stop this at various points because this guy is a lunatic. He's a complete and utter lunatic. Nobody is attacking Japan. Nobody is. All of these things have become issues because they're being made issues. It's kind of like, hey, if you don't touch it, I won't touch it, and then you touch it. Taiwan only became an issue because the United States has started putting military hardware and it started working with separatist forces in Taiwan. Taiwan is not Ukraine. Those are different things. And what I mean by they're different things is, A, Taiwan is part of China. The United States even recognizes it as part of China. So the idea that the United States has invaded part of China and is now screaming that Taiwan is somehow an independent actor in the way that it acts and in the way that it engages, even to the point of saying China is going to attack and invade Taiwan. How are you invading yourself? How is the United States invading Texas if it sends military in Texas to deal with some kind of external actor in Texas? I hope you get my point. It's not the way that it works. China has not invaded anybody. Neither has, and certainly, there's no intention of invading or attacking Japan. It is a bizarre, weird point of view that he's effectively taking. And you must understand this point of view is governed around this notion of world primacy by the United States. We don't like the fact that China is becoming a military force. And so we need to get bigger as a military force to deal with the fact that China seems to be growing as a military force. Okay, but that's on you. Nobody told you that you were going to remain the supremacist for eternity and that you get to destroy the world the moment that you are no longer let's say, the hegemon in the real sense of the term. That is a choice that is being made by 4% of the globe, or the leaders of 4% of the globe, to dominate the rest of the globe, and seemingly willingness to end the rest of the globe when it is no longer leader of that globe. I want to go to a few points that he's making here, because this is just outrageous. Let's start at the beginning.
One, no war.
Yeah, but you're doing everything to pursue that war. The very actions that you're taking are propagating and instigating that war. No other country, China, certainly, Iran, certainly, even going by William Burns, the William Burns memo back in 2008, when he came out saying "niet" means "niet." At the very end of that memo, what did he say? Russia would have to get involved, something that it does not want to do. None of these countries are eager or trying to do war. They're trying to do economic development. The country that is doing war is us. But let's keep going. Let him talk. Let him finish. Come on.
It'll be catastrophic economically across the world, and also just on a personal human cost. No one wants that. So this is the most challenging time I've seen in my 32 years of active duty. The Japanese, who I work with each day, consider Japan is like Poland, the Philippines is like Romania, China is like Russia, Taiwan is Ukraine.
What? What? Tell us more, Mr. Val, of your awesome analysis of this.
Consider Japan is like Poland.
Japan is not like Poland. I don't even know what that means. Japan is not like Poland.
The Philippines is like Romania.
Philippines is not like Romania. They're not like Romania.
China is like Russia.
China is not like Russia. He's saying that because of Taiwan.
Taiwan is Ukraine.
That's terrifying. That is the angle, the point of view, and the comic diminutive way that he is trying to explain this. We are putting weapons in the Philippines to go after China. We're putting weapons in Japan to go after China. They're trying to create this kind of weird NATO-ish type of thing in that region, even dealing with Australia as a way to go after China. China is not attacking any of these countries. China has not threatened any of these countries. It is outrageous to even postulate it. Ukraine is a war that started because we overthrew the legitimate government of Ukraine in 2014, and we were effectively trying to get them into NATO, something that all of them understood was a red line, and yet pushed that red line nonetheless. Whether it is de facto or whether it is in fact, they equal to the same thing. All of this stuff is being hidden from you in the way that your mainstream media talks about it, because they have a memory of a hamster. This guy seems to have the intellect of a hamster as he is talking about this stuff, which makes it terrifying that this guy is leading men, sending people into potential war zones at the discretion of the US government, who once again is trying to maintain some level of supremacy. That is a terrifying, terrifying outcome, that guy is in charge of anything. If he was running a subway, I would have concerns. The fact that he is literally in charge of military in that region of the world is utterly and incomprehensibly terrifying. It's terrifying. Like, I can't, like, and then he's showing it on a map. Like, I'm teaching people stuff. No, you're not. You're not teaching people anything. That's not even good propaganda. The Philippines is Romania. It is not. Romania, if you remember, had an election where it was stopped because the Romanian people were going to go out saying, we don't want a military base. We don't want to become Ukraine. If you want to say Romania is anything, you can say, well, Romania is the second front that we want to effectively effectuate because we're losing so miserably in Ukraine right now. So we are trying to open up a second front and feed Romanians to Russians. If that's what you want to say, okay, fair enough. That I would agree with. That would say, hey, that's right. You are trying to overthrow the election of Romania. You are trying to prevent the people from having their say, and that say being, we do not want a second front. We do not want to become Ukraine. Same thing with Georgia, by the way. when they were doing everything in their power to overthrow the government of Georgia. And if you remember, they were trying to have a color revolution with that Parisian president that was a turncoat, that was effectively an agent of Europe, that was doing everything in their power to overthrow the government of Georgia, to get the government of Georgia to feed its people to the Russians, because once again, they were losing in Ukraine. I'm trying to make that clear. It's not like the Russians went into Ukraine just for shits and giggles. If you are on their border, if you are telling me that the United States, if Russia or China had overthrew the government of Mexico, put in troops, intelligence, had been working on steeping a certain amount of hatred and rage in that particular country, and Mexico starts saying, we're going to take back Texas, we're going to take back New Mexico, we're going to go after the Americans. You cannot tell me that if the Mexican government builds up a huge military on the border, backed by foreign government, that the US government will say, hey man, they're an independent nation, they can do whatever they want. That would not be the point of view, I promise you. And if you think that, you're out of your mind. We've had the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we were willing to end the world because the Soviet Union was working with the Cubans and putting missiles in Cuba. And yet, all of that history is completely and entirely forgotten. What was a literal, by every fiber of the word, coup, they turned into a revolution of dignity. A revolution of dignity. It's just outrageous, that's all. But this is what is promoted, this is what is pushed out, and this is what that guy will be on CNN saying the same nonsense that he was effectively saying right there. It's untethered to all notions of reality. I just want to make that point clear. I saw the video and I was like, this guy's goofball. He even looks like Barney Fife. And yet he is out here trying to explain and articulate military matters. And it's not like our president is any better. This is Trump, the same degenerate, by the way, that is allowing for the murder of babies that he considers to be dangerous babies because, you know, they're dangerous babies. At some point, they're going to grow up and they're going to get a gun. Starving, murdering people en masse. Donald Trump. It wouldn't happen if Donald Trump wasn't paying for it. And yet, weirdly enough, he would come out and say, comically, and saying things like this.
Hit Kyiv with missiles and drones, more than 100 people kidnapped.
I think it's Russia. I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting. This is Biden's war. It's not my war. But I said if I get in, I'll try and get the thing stopped. But I think what Russia's doing is very sad. A lot of Russians are dying. You have a lot of Russians, more Russians are dying, but Russians are dying, Ukrainians are dying. You know, the United States isn't really involved in that war. It shouldn't be. And by the way, I made a deal with NATO where NATO pays us for it.
The United States is not involved in that war, but I made a deal with NATO where we were going to send them weapons. The United States was the prime instigator of that war. Prime instigator.
I think it's Russia. I think it's disgusting.
Has no issue, however, paying, I got rid of it, paying for babies that are effectively starving to death. That he's okay with. But the Russians, the Russians. Do you know that in some of those attacks, Russia fired hundreds of drones and you got like one casualty? This notion that Russians are just mowing people over. Yes, they are degrading the enemy. They are doing that. Any and every Ukrainian that they can shoot in the face, they're shooting it in the face if they are in military service, because part of the rationale for the special military operation was to degrade the Ukrainian military. That was the objective. That is what they're doing. That is different than this idea of them mowing down civilians, which is unfounded. If you're looking for people who are mowing down civilians, you're looking for Israelis. They are the ones that would bomb hospitals. They are the ones that will bomb schools. They were the ones where you have children in flames running around in the school because they effectively bomb schools, bomb tents, etc. 100 casualties a day. I'm sorry, killings a day is a better way to put it. When you send people to a quote unquote food distribution area, starving human beings, some of which fall dead of starvation as they're trying to get food. And then you take pop shots where you think it's fun to shoot at those people. I think you're an evil, satanic lunatic. That's what I think. That is our president. And the notion that you can say murdering babies, women, children, old men, etc., is perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. But those Russians who seem to be going above and beyond to not kill civilians, I think you're a lunatic. I think you're a sociopath. That's what I think. That is a president of the United States. He seems to make a distinction in one and don't make a distinction in the other. He is a sociopath. He also came out and said this. This was another thing that Donald Trump pointed out. We're going to pass sanctions, but we don't know if these things are going to work.
Russia, I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting. This is Biden's war. It's not my war. But I said if I get in, I'll try and get the thing stopped.
No, dude, it is your war.
I think what Russia's doing is very sad. A lot of Russians are dying. You have a lot of Russians, more Russians are dying, but Russians are dying, Ukrainians are dying. The United States isn't really involved in that war. It shouldn't be. And by the way, I made a deal with NATO where NATO pays us for everything that we send. We send them rockets. No, I think it's disgraceful. Yeah, we have about 8 guys. So yeah, we're going to put sanctions. I don't know that sanctions bother him. They know about sanctions. I know better than anybody about sanctions and tariffs and everything else. I don't know if that has any effect, but we're going to do it. Europe is extremely upset, but this is a war that should have never happened.
He's like, yeah, we're going to pass sanctions. I don't know if those sanctions are going to work. I don't think sanctions bother him. We are on the same page on that. We're on the same page on that. They don't care about your sanctions. They don't. They're going to pursue their military objectives. You can pass whatever sanction you want. In fact, as I pointed out, I am super curious. I want you to pass those sanctions. I want to see what happens. I want to see you go to India, a country that you're supposed to be making a deal with, and say, by the way, we're going to add 100% sanctions. I want to see him do that to China and say, hey, I know we were making a deal with you, but we're also going to now pass 100% sanctions on you too. I want to see him do that to Saudi Arabia. I want to see him do it to UAE. I want to see him to do that. So the rest of the world that is effectively exchanging and making deals with Russia, Indonesia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do it. Do it. Don't tell me about it. Do it. Don't wait 10 days. Do it now. Why wait 10 days? I want to see that shit now. I want to see you come out tomorrow and say, hey, I know it's in 10 days because we're talking about Taco Trump. Trump can change his mind in a heartbeat. I know it's in 10 days, but Ukraine is getting the hell beat out of them. Syrian has just fallen. What is the other place? Petros is about to fall. This is a disaster. Even our own biased nonsense Western media reports it as a disaster. So I, Donald Trump, who don't believe the sanctions are really going to affect Putin's behavior, are going to enact those same sanctions that are not going to affect Putin's behavior right now. Do it. Do it. I'm super curious. I want to see it. Let that be manifest in reality, and let it be manifest in reality right now. What is the difference between 10 days to now if you know that it's not going to affect his behavior one iota? What's the difference? There is no difference, right? We're talking about a temporal difference that for all intents and purposes doesn't really mean anything. If you are saying that, hey, I don't believe Putin's behavior is going to be affected at all through sanctions. I don't think he cares. I agree with you. He doesn't. So what is the point in waiting? What is the point in waiting? The reality of it is that Donald Trump has already passed the biggest tax increase on the American public that we have ever seen. And what I mean by that is all of these tariffs, Syria, 41%, Laos, 40%, Myanmar, 40%, Switzerland, 39%, Iraq, 35%, Serbia, 35%, Algeria, 35%. Is that right? Algeria. Come on. 30%, I'm sorry, for Algeria. Bosnia, let's just say Bosnia, I'm not even going to try. 30%, South Africa, 30%, Libya, 30%, Brunei, 25%, India, 25%. So is it going to be 125% when Russia just blows you off? Or is it 100%? Which one's going to be? I don't know. Again, I'm super curious, interested to watch. Kazakhstan, 25%. Moldova, 25%. Bangladesh, 20%. Sri Lanka, 20%. Taiwan, 20%. Vietnam, 20%. Cambodia, 19%. Indonesia, 19%. Malaysia, 19%. He's increased taxes on where I am. Pakistan, 19%. Philippines, 19%. Thailand, 19%. Nicaragua, 18%. Afghanistan, 15%. Angola, 15%. Bolivia, 15%. Botswana, 15%. Cameroon, 15%. Chad, 15%. Costa Rica, 15%. Cote d'Ivoire, nailed it, 15%. Democratic Republic of Congo, 15%. Ecuador, 15%. Equatorial New Guinea, 15%. European Union, 15%. He even hit the European Union, 15%. Well, there's an asterisk on that. Why is that asterisk? I don't know why the asterisk. United Kingdom, 10%. Falkland Islands, 10%. Zimbabwe, 15%. Brazil, 10%. Well, I guess that's on the 50% that he hit Brazil with. Zambia, 15%. Venezuela, 15%. Uganda, 15%. Turkey, 15%. Trinidad, Tobago, South Korea, Papua New Guinea, Norway, North Macedonia, Nigeria, New Zealand, Nauru, Namibia, Mozambique. All of those get 15%. Liechtenstein, 15%. Japan, 15%. And I thought he had a deal with Japan. That is called a tax increase on America. Every product that you buy. And by the way, including low-cost goods. Apparently, there was a freeze on any kind of tax increase, or let's say tariff, that was going for low-cost goods. Anything under, I believe it was $200. It might have been $800, but either $800 or $200. So the products that you would buy from Walmart, for example, were exempt from the tariffs. That is no longer true. That is no longer true. So Americans will be paying for those as tax increases. Because what companies are going to do is say, okay, you're trying to be 15%. I'm going to pass that on to the American consumer. The American consumer is now going to have to pay more. And the president is going to go around saying, we're winning because we're getting countries to pay all of this extra tax money. It's not winning if you have to pay for it. You're not getting it back. When he passes this massive tax cut, and that money is going to go to the rich, you are going to be the one that is going to be able to buy less, to get less. If you're already broke and barely making ends meet, I'm sorry for you. Your president has made it so that you are in a worse economic situation. So when I say I am super curious on Trump passing these secondary sanctions, effectively saying your sovereignty doesn't matter to us, do it. Do it. I'm curious. I want to see it. I want to see it happen. I want to see it unfold. I want to see what the public does. I want to see how the public accepts it. I want to see, is the public okay with paying more? And the level of propaganda that is going to be necessary to try to get the public into the mindset that it is somehow good that Trump is passing random sanctions on the world. I want to see it. And just to make the point clear about this idea that Trump is permitting this while screaming at the Russians is effing outrageous. Completely and effing outrageous. It takes an evil person to allow that, especially when you have the power to stop that. Trump is not stopping that. Trump is making excuses for that. These kids are not in isolation. This is becoming the norm in Gaza. When Donald Trump is screaming about the Russians, tell him to F off. Tell him to F off. He's an evil psychopath that is effectively allowing the murder on a large scale of children, women, men, etc. By the way, just to end this, he's sending Wickoff over into Russia, and I have no idea why. No idea why. Trump will say, well, Putin is very polite. It's not about being polite. It's not about whether you like me on an individual level. I mean, on some level it is, but not really. These are issues of state. And in the context of issues of state, we have given you what we need to end the war. You either accept it or you don't. You have no cards on the ground in real terms to affect our behavior in any particular way. We're willing to make a deal if we believe we can be safe in the context of that deal, and if our needs and security needs specifically are met. If our security needs are not going to be met in a deal because A, we don't trust you, B, you don't have the power to enact it, or C, you're just not willing to enact it because the American president doesn't want to accept the fact that he lost. Losers don't get to dictate terms. Then we will continue to pursue our military objectives. The Ukrainian military will fall. They will collapse. If we keep pushing, they will fall. Just like they fell in Chasiv Yar, just like they're going to fall in Petros, just like they're going to fall in Kramatorsk, on Slamiansk. They will fall. Our speed and our events will increase. The Russians know it. Honest military analysts know it. And I would imagine there's some guy whittling away at the White House who probably is not going to get called on by Trump. That guy knows it also. The fact that Russia knows it, means you have no cards on the battlefield to change the context of events. And so, yes, you can bitch, you can moan, you can scream, you can try to bash Medvedev, you can try to bash the Indians. Your frenetic rage is irrelevant to us. We're accomplishing objectives, and these objectives of state. That's it. No more, no less. Maybe what it takes is for the Ukrainian military to get to the brink of collapse. And as the Russians get further into Western Ukraine, as they take more of Zaporozhye, as they get to the point of potentially taking Kiev if that needs to be taken, you're going to get a massive freakout by the West. And the question is going to be raised, do we let it fall or do we get involved? That is going to be a terrifying precipice that Donald Trump is headed towards as we speak, because the sanctions that he's passing don't matter. In fact, many of them, people don't even believe that he is going to be able to enact these without having a blowback on the United States and the people of the United States. So when I say I'm super curious to see if he does it, that is where my curiosity lies. That is where my curiosity lies. Before I let you go, I want to do one more story that is fascinating to me. So as you know, Candace Owens, oh geez, this is not the Candace Owens clip. This is just me fucking around at this point. Right here. Tesla bot. So, as you know, or many of you know, stop. Okay. As you know, or many of you know, there is a very large percentage of Ukrainian women that are in OnlyFans at this point. It was something like 50% were Ukrainian because they needed to feed their families, feed themselves. Their men have been shipped off to war to die. They needed to make a living, and they decided to make that living in the oldest profession there is. OnlyFans. Oldest professional OnlyFans. So you have a huge contingent of Ukrainian women who are effectively porn stars or doing OnlyFans. There have been, I don't know if they're complaints, I don't know why they're complaints, but this young woman, very attractive, has decided to forego men and to get herself a Tesla bot. This is the funniest thing in the world to me. She's molesting the Tesla bot. Now, this is somehow an average. And it's such a waste. It doesn't even have a penis. It doesn't even have a penis. And personally, I don't trust any dishes washed by that thing. None in the lease. That is going to be a phenomenal waste of money. Phenomenal waste of money. Up and like, look, I don't doubt that at some point those robots are going to be proficient at something, but not now. Candace Owens, and I'm going to end it on this. Candace Owens, my co-host never liked her. My co-host always thought she was putting on. And up until the point where the Israel conflict took place, I guess I still don't like her, to be honest. But my likes are irrelevant. Candace Owens, for the most part, has been a very strong advocate of, let's say, the Palestinian cause, or let's say the anti-Israel cause. Some people may say she is anti-Semitic. There's stuff that she has said that has gone off the rails. But for all intents and purposes, she lost her job on this notion of saying Israel is out of its effing mind, and is doing that very early on. She's not a Johnny-come-lately. She was saying it from the very beginning, and God bless her for saying it. Something else she said, however, has gotten her in trouble, and she is going to be sued. And I will make a prediction right now that she is going to lose that lawsuit. Candace Owens has gone with the notion that Bridget, what is his last name? I don't know her last name. I'm assuming like Macron's wife, I'll say it that way, is a man. That Macron's wife, Emmanuel Macron's, his wife, is a man. Now, I will say that she is a bit brutish. I will say that. For example, when he was slapped getting off the airplane, it's the funniest thing in the world. Right here. This is Macron getting slapped, getting off the airplane. This is a picture of it, blown up, so you can see it right here. Just want to old image. Okay, good. Right here. That's him getting slapped by his very powerful wife. Very powerful. I don't know as a flat fact whether she's a man or a woman. I will say you need a hell of a lot of evidence if you're going to go with this idea that she is a man. And the problem for Candace Owens is that she does not have that evidence. She does not have that evidence. This is them two getting off the airplane after Macron got slapped, just so you can see it for yourself. That's him getting slapped. That's her getting off the plane after, where he said, oh, we were just playing. He did not have the look of a man who was playing. He had the look of a man who is a battered man who just got slapped by his quote unquote wife. All right. Candace Owens is being sued by Bridget Macron. She's being sued in a court of law in America, I suppose, for slander. Because again, you have a huge platform and you're screaming at the top of your lungs that I am a man. What is the evidence that Candace Owens has to make this case that Bridget Macron is a man? Candace Owens goes on her show and discusses this. All right. This is what Candace Owens had to say about the whole Bridget Macron being a man thing. And after listening and watching this video, I said to myself, Candace Owens is going to lose in court, and her podcast is going to belong to that man in very short order whenever the court case takes place. She is screwed.
You can
and if what she's saying here is any evidence of what she has, she's effed.
It is very clear that Brigitte Trogneau existed. It is very clear that she was, in fact, the sister of Jean-Michel Trogneau. And I think that if I am guessing what took place here, Jean-Michel Trogneau took Brigitte Trogneau's identity at some point. It's very obvious he kind of becomes his sister. That's what seems to be the most logical conclusion based off of everything. So the question that people ask is, okay, if you're operating under that theory, what happened to the real Brigitte Trogneau? And so if we are to believe that, I do believe that Brigitte Trogneau, the real Brigitte Trogneau, existed, it's plausible that Brigitte Trogneau got sick, that the real Brigitte Trogneau got sick and perhaps had a dying wish to help her brother, Jean-Michel Trogneau, who was living perhaps as Veronique, right? And knowing that, okay, well, he's never going to be allowed to live his life authentically. He's always going to have to hiding, always going to be hiding and doing these sorts of things, because this is just not a time where people are recognizing this transgendered identity. Well, what if she gifted her brother her identity? Here, this is not a thing yet. You can just become me. Okay, that's, again, we're surmising. There's no evidence that Brigitte Trogneau died. There's no evidence of that. But that's what it feels like to me. It feels like to me that Brigitte Trogneau did her brother, the real Brigitte Trogneau, did her brother a favor and allowed him to become her.
Very attractive woman. I give her that. I give her that. Your feelings, as you expressed them there, as you said, I don't know. I don't have any evidence of this, but I feel this way. I feel this way. You are postulating, just so we can be brimingly clear. You are postulating that there were two, a brother and a sister. The brother died. The brother dropped dead. You admit there's no evidence of that. But that's what you're postulating. The brother dropped dead somewhere. And his dying wish was to gift his identity to the sister who wanted to live as a man. And that man married Emmanuel Macron, pretending to be a woman. Bold claim. Bold claim. I would, on a boldness level of 1 to 10, you are pushing a 30. I give you that. I need evidence for that. And she will not sue you if she didn't believe that she could beat you. Meaning, if this was true, she wouldn't be taking you to court. If this was true, she wouldn't be suing the shit out of you. And when you're making claims like that, where you are using your feelings as evidence, you are screwed. You are screwed. I mean, come on. What am I missing here, right? What am I missing? They already tried in French court. Well, they didn't lose on the idea of whether she was a man or a woman, from my understanding. It was something else. She is coming down to American court and having this fight. Understand the gravity of what it would mean if you were being sued for can't get it out. If you're being sued for slander because you are saying that a woman is a man, maybe she gets off on a technicality where it's like, well, she's a public figure and you can trash public figures. We will see. I'm highly skeptical. If the best that she has, and she's articulating there, is that she feels this way, she is screwed. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. I could be wrong. I think Candace Owens is screwed on this. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. She has a whole, right here, she has a whole series where she provides evidence, quote unquote, her evidence. You would have to watch the whole thing. It's funny. Who knows how it turns out? She may get off on a technicality, but I'm not, I am putting my chips on her losing in court. That's why I'm putting my chips. She's being sued for defamation, that's slander. Okay, thank you. Defamation, fair enough. Fair enough. There's a legal distinction. I get that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That doesn't change my point of view. Doesn't change my point of view. She's going to lose. She's just a smear merchant. Nope. Candy, she gets cleaned out, gives away their kind of conduct, can't be allowed to go forward. We will see. We will see. We will see. She's being sued for defamation and slander. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you for that. I want to be accurate, so thank you for that. Let's see. let's go to the chat. Alexander G. Jewish supremacists were cleansing European villages 150 years ago. These are the same people doing Gaza now. Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, but I would say they're definitely murdering and committing a genocide right now. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know. Playlist by Kevin Wayne. I love that. Why is that name familiar? That name is familiar. Emailed you on the book Lab Leak Fever by Dr. Philip Marklin. I think I nailed that. Check it out. It's about COVID's origins. The COVID origin thing is fascinating. Like, nobody accepted the lab. Okay, that's not true. The preponderance of the public didn't accept the lab leak theory because there was a huge amount of groupthink around this idea of it coming out of the Chinese lab because it came across as racist. Not esoterically so, but because Donald Trump was screaming China virus, which is, but it's racist. I'm sorry. It's just racist. You've tarnished a potential to figure out how it started. Then you find out that the United States was directly involved in that research and that the lab was working on, what is the name of it? Gain of function research. Effectively, how can we make this, for lack of a better term, more lethal? How can we increase the potency of this particular virus? And so it's like, it came out of a wet market, and then it switched to, well, maybe it did come out of a lab. That's a wild switch that took place over time. And for the people who were saying, well, it came out of a lab and they were being shouted down, not being shouted down anymore, are they? There's another theory that it was coming out of the United States that China was pushing out and some other people were backing up. But either way you look at it, it seems that Fauci and the US had a hand in working with the Chinese in regard to that virus. It's fascinating. It's just fascinating to me in what you could say versus what you couldn't say and how that flipped over time. Then you had it's not Popular Mechanics. It's the magazine that deals with the atomic clock, the nuclear scientists. They came out with an article that also pointed out that, hey, this might have came out of a lab. And when that article came out, the doors of perception were open. Then you end up with a conversation with Fauci talking to his other scientists, where Fauci, they were clear in the back and forth that they didn't know, that Fauci didn't know, that Fauci effectively pushed a narrative into the public that he didn't know was true. His other scientists were contesting that narrative, and that Fauci was able to enshrine that as a point of view moving forward that eventually collapsed. I don't know, it's fascinating. It's just totally fascinating. Playlist by Kevin Wayne. I will check that out. We have Sandra Hearn. Became a member. Thank you, Sandra Hearn. You know, it's funny. I don't know if you guys are the same people. I used to go to this program called Upward Bound in Virginia Union. And the man who used to run the program his last name was Hearns. I think it was Hearn. He used to look like Minister from A-Man. You guys may not know that show. It's a black show. What is his first name? I can see his face. It's not William. I can't think of his first name. Sandra, thank you. Thank you for that. Welcome to the family, by the way. Frank Friel. Most Americans don't realize that they need to check sources of corporate media. They've been conditioned to just swallow it or believe it. People I know who have a clue still want to believe the bullshit. It's tough to break the conditioning. Frank, I feel like an asshole in that conversation. Because, look, I do have this Star Trek-esque vision of the world of transparency, honesty, deal with countries where you can, if you're working towards the betterment, yes, there'll be people who are psychopaths, but you have to know that. And you build society knowing that and dealing with that directly. I hope that makes sense. You end up with a culture, in my mind, where needs are met, where this survivalist point of view that we've been stuck with since the inception of humanity is degraded, where you're using machines and technology for the purpose to which they should be used, which is to provide need. If you provide people the things that they need, people are less likely to lose their fucking minds in regards to survivalist instincts. Yes, I know that there are divisions and everything else in various societies. I still have a strong belief that if you leave countries and people to their devices, and those people have the things that they need to grow and develop, we could be better people. I'm not saying it's utopia. I'm not saying it's perfect. I am saying that it's not this, I am somehow dejected and have this kind of nihilism against my society and against my group and against the people around me because I am lacking something. Look, I could be wrong. But I think that's a better alternative than what we have now. I think modernity, and again, I don't mean modernity in a capitalistic way. I mean it just as a societal way of us coming together, coming up with a rational mode of engagement and living that eschews some of the, let's say, negative repercussions of the way that we live now. We have a society of many people who are nihilists. And you could say, well, those people are just out of it. But are they just out of it? I mean, if you are barely making ends meet and you have a kid to raise, do you feel some kind of way about a government that makes your life more difficult as opposed to making your life easier? It's one thing if you have healthcare, education. Let's say you just have that as a primary basis of things. Okay, well, that's not you paying $70,000 when you're 18 years old, like having that on your back as you're 18 years old. Okay, that's royally screwed up. Or somehow being hit because you have some kind of medical issue that you didn't ask for, but you're effectively stuck with, that your life is somehow burdensome. I'm trying to make the point of we can have a different society, a different way of engaging. We have the technology to build high-speed rail, we just don't. We have the technology to build the shit that they're building in China, to put stuff on the moon, to have this, we can do those things. We just don't do those things because we have a capitalistic system that chains everything to some level of profit, as opposed to having a system that looks for human development and human best interests of humanity. Those are very different systems. No, this is not saying you have to be China. I'm saying that you can organize yourself. It's not like Constitution is, by God. This is something that is written by human beings. We choose. That's all there is. There's no Leviathan. There's no angel that's going to come and say, hey, we're going to bless. None of that. None of that. You get by based on what you as human beings do. And you as human beings have the capability of making this world utopian-ish, or the hellscape we have now, where we're at each other's throats. We're at the brink of war. You're spending trillions of dollars murdering and killing people. You're committing genocides. You decided that your need for primacy supersedes human life and human, et cetera, et cetera. How much money are you spending doing that? And what else could that money be used for to the betterment of humanity or to the betterment of even your society? I'm saying those are very different points of view that are not espoused by the group of sociopaths that are in a political system that encourages this type of behavior. Those things are very different. Call me utopian, fair enough. I'll accept it. Diane Thomas, Jamal Thomas, just want to thank you for people in the chat. Day in, day out, they are here supporting you. I thank each and every one of you for your support. And I thank each and every one of you also. Honestly, I can't do a show without you, frankly. Nasmata 3, keep boycotting Israel. Their evil society and economy is collapsing from your mouth to God's ears. From your mouth to God's ears. That society needs to clap. But look, this is going to be controversial because I live here. So does the US. I don't mean this, just to be very clear. There's nothing in me that wants a helter-skelter society. But that is what we got. Those dead babies, that's not magic. It's not coming from nowhere. That is coming from US policy, where we make a decision, we make a choice. This is what we want. We're going to back our colony. We're going to back our colony of squatters who have decided that these people who are on this land shouldn't be on this land. We're going to mythologize it with some notion of God's chosen, which is just a supremacist ideology in the same way that American exceptionalism is a supremacist ideology, or the Western thought in regards to the leaders of supremacist ideology. We have decided that there are disposable people. Now, you can make an argument that all of us are disposable from the standpoint of the people who are in power. That may be a fair point, but obviously there are some that are more disposable that we have decided we need that land. We need that for military and geopolitical supremacy. And so if we need to commit a genocide in order to get rid of it, we've committed genocides before. This one seems to be publicized, but in 100 years, people will forget. That seems to be the thinking in this, with the rest of the world seemingly shocked by it and watching. We're all culpable. Some of us are more culpable. If you're living in the US, you are more culpable. These are your tax dollars that are going to pay for the killing and the murder and the rounding up people in camps, making a death camp by getting smaller and smaller area for you to murder people in. This is what we're doing. So yeah, you can make the argument that Israel needs to collapse. Fair enough, agreed. They need to be destroyed every bit as much as the Nazis needed to be destroyed. This is a sick and sadistic ideology that has allowed itself to believe that you can just murder these people. These are animals. You can just kill these people. They're whack jobs. They're sociopaths. Yes, it needs to fall. But who's backing those sociopaths? Israel is not a thing unto itself. Israel is nothing. Nothing at all. If it wasn't for the US paying 80% for those murders that they're committing. I hope you get my point. Who is setting fires around the globe? That goofball general who was talking about, Taiwan is Ukraine and Romania is Poland and all this nonsense. It's people like that. This idea of we can set fires around the globe because this is a rules-based order and we need to maintain control and dominance around the globe. So if we start wars, we set fires. That's perfectly okay. That is sociopathic in its nature. And I use the term sociopath because it's different than psychopath. Sociopath is based on societal factors that make a person get to a certain point of view of saying, this is the way the world works, so this is the way I'm going to operate. I'm saying that is sick. It's evil at its core. But this is the way we function, with a huge amount of propaganda to make it look as if we're loving light, even as we set fires and murder people around the globe. The US media is not talking about this genocide in the context of the US effectively paying and effecting this genocide. They didn't even bring it up for the longest of times. And then when they did bring it up, they were bringing it with this tepid, soft language about murdering dangerous babies. These people just so happen to have starved, as opposed to Israeli military starving and Israeli government starving and murdering these human beings. What's taking place in the West Bank now is ungodly. You don't hear it in Western media, them talking about the murdering of the people in the West Bank, the theft of their homes, the burning down backed by the Israeli military. You don't hear that stuff talked about in Western media. You see it here every so often. If you're in a Muslim country, you see it. But even those quisling governments that are effectively paid for and supported by the United States as they stand by and watch Arabs and Muslims get murdered. It's fucking outrageous. It's not just Israel, is my point. And I don't mean America in the sense of the human beings, the human capital. I mean it in the sense of a sociopathic government and a political system that allows that stuff to take place. Nazi Germany wasn't the end of Germany. It was the end of Nazism in Germany. The end of the Soviet Union wasn't the end of Russia. It was the end of the Soviet Union and political structure. I'm saying the same thing is true for the American empire. That shit needs to end, especially if that shit is supporting a genocide, which it is. So yes, agreed. Wholeheartedly agreed. It's not just Israel. Keep up the grind. Love from down under. Sad times. Bandit. Down under. Australia. So you're 2 hours ahead of me. So that means, what is 12 o'clock in Australia? Yeah. Thank you for that. Alexander G. The 14th word is a reference to, quote, we must secure the existence of our people and future of white children, unquote. Whatever you feel about it, exchange white for whatever creed you like. Yeah, that's grotesque, right? Yeah, it's grotesque. Look, my point of view, as I said before, we don't have to be like this. Oh, Jesus Christ. I can't. I don't know how to pronounce that. You got to look things happening in the world through the lens of Judeo-Christian ideology, as many in the Western world really think it's prophecies. I grant you that. I do grant you that it's not all about survival. It's not all about needs, class, that there are political ideologies that influence people. But do they really believe that stuff? Like, let's be honest, like 3 a.m. between them and their God? Or is it an excuse in order to lump together to try to get more of something? More political power, more clout, more capability of taking control of X or Y. And we're doing this in the context of a group, and we're using this group as the excuse to do X or Y in regards to the larger world. Or do they actually believe God chose us? We have no proof, but God chose us. We have a book. The book says God chose us. And because God chose us, here we are. You know what's fascinating? What if God did chose him, but God in the sense of some kind of alien race? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't that should be fascinating? Yeah, you might be right. I do accept that they're political ideologies. I do accept that. Yeah, they can't stop us as a world. That shit needs to be stamped out. Crush Panda agreed. As a fellow U.S. citizen, we need to fail. Yes, our political system needs to fail. It doesn't, look, it's not like it serves us, right? I mean, Donald Trump has just passed the largest tax cut on American citizens. How's that America first? Or even if you're looking at pulling out $1 trillion out of Medicaid, when we barely have a healthcare system as it is that serves the best interests of the American public. For fuck's sake, we die like 5 years younger than Europe. How is that serving us? How is that to our betterment? It's not. How is pulling food out of SNAP programs, the poorest of this country, serving us? How is increasing taxes on the poorest of this country, which is what he's doing when you're looking at the amount of taxes drop versus the amount of money that you're going to have to pay extra for the poor parts of this country? How does that serve us? Even the no tax on tips with the limit of $25,000. How does that serve us? He wasn't putting limits on people who were making buku's amounts of money. I'm saying that you have a system that caters to the rich and to the wealthy with a propaganda system from the standpoint of media that backs up that point of view. That does not serve us. That is a political structure that needs to fall and collapse. That's my take. Agreed, Trash Panda. Diamond Encrusted Abdullah. I am Jesus Christ. You will be saved, my son. You will be saved. I'm always fascinated by save. In fact, I'm always fascinated by religious imagery in general, in books and stuff like that. Always fascinated by it. It's a heavy, like a God thing. It's fascinating, even below gods. So there used to be this woman, a psychic named Psychic Sylvia Brown. If you're in the United States, you know exactly who she is. She was, she used to come on Montel Williams. And Psychic Sylvia Brown used to say, I have a guide, a spirit guide. And she says, not like some of the religious stuff, she would say, all of you have one, and you can contact your guide. This piqued my interest to know him, piqued my interest. I am not a believer of astrology, but I did go through a New Agey phase when I was younger that I learned a lot of the stuff associated with it. So I'm still curious about that stuff. Believer, no. Curiosity, yes. And I like to see whether or not, it's almost like, do connections apply? I have a moon in the 8th. This is just, I am what I am, what I am. remote viewing, out-of-body stuff, fascinated by all of it, tried all of it. When she said, you yourself can meet your guide if you want, I was like, whoa, really? That's some heavy shit. Because what she means by that is that effectively you are on a plane of existence. I mean, by definition, it would have to be that, right? You're in a plane of existence. But in the context of the plane of existence, there is something else, almost like a hypercube. Like you are working on three-dimensional space and time. And that kind of like, what was it, Einstein? I forget the physicists, but they were pointing out that it has to be projected from something. Like whatever this is, we're just kind of born into it. We function into it. But we don't know what it is, if that makes sense. Like familiarity gives you this sense of knowingness, even though you don't know anything about it. That's why you're physicists, right? They're probing the depths of reality. But even in the context of what they're probing the depths of reality, it doesn't hit this question of existence. It just doesn't. It feels like you're looking at nuts and bolts without the overarching thing of purpose. That's assuming there is purpose, right? On a human corporeal level, there's no purpose. It's not. Another guy told me, he says, you're denying God. The conversation was great, by the way. That conversation left me with a lot of thoughts. But he's like, this idea of saying that there is no such thing as purpose. You choose, you make a choice of what you want to do. This stuff is human will. You define the purpose, and that has to be enough. And he's like, you're denying God. But either way, the very thought of some external thing beyond this is fascinating, just fascinating. And if she's right, let's say she's right, which, by the way, I do think there's more, even though I don't go with the religious stuff, because I think the more precise you try to make it, the more further you're off. Like if you had a computer program and you said, yeah, computer program, there's such a thing called the color blue. How do you describe the color blue? How do you explain it to a computer program without showing it the color blue? Or if you asked it, okay, what is it like to exist? Can it really hit it in any real terms? And the more precise it gets, the further off it's going to be. Even if you tell it, even if you say, it's like this, how do you explain existence in essence? And you get these religious leaders who have all of these very specific things of what it's like. You have 10 angels and they're dancing on the head of a pin and they're doing this, and it's like, really? It's like, yes, that's what they're doing. Yeah. I am not, obviously, I'm not religious. I was the one who used to tell my pastor, I was like, yeah, but why do you think that? Why do you believe that? Why is that your thoughts? YouTube censor any sentiment condemning genocide. YouTube is psychopath, degenerate, evil. Well, you must understand that YouTube is an American construct. And so it is going to function in a particular way. Like even if you do video titles, they would demonetize that video. You will be surprised at how many videos I got demonetized because my title is too aggressive in the way that I was going after Israel. Yeah, it's an American company. I mean, think of what they did with RT. The moment that the war started, they got rid of RT, they got rid of Sputnik, they got rid of anything in that context that was effectively arguing against the propaganda that was coming out of the West. And we were right, they were wrong. It didn't matter about right or wrong. What mattered was the point of view that was being emphasized over and over and over, that was being beat into the American public for them to believe a particular point of view. It wasn't about right, wrong. It wasn't about, ethics, morality, transparency, truth, what really happened, give us some context. They didn't want that stuff. They wanted people to believe a very specific thing so they can propagate the war. That's what they wanted in Europe. That's what they wanted here, which is the reason why they got rid of all of that stuff from RT. There's no difference in the context of Zionists or lunatics, nut jobs, genocidal maniacs, filthy animals who are effectively promoting and pushing that genocide. They have a certain point of view. It's not like YouTube is a non-biased actor. It's an American company. And so they're going to function as an American company. Now, they may say whatever they want to say in regards to, oh, no, we're this and that. Here's the thing. If you have a channel or a company and you allow any Ukrainian bullshit case, any made up shit that they want to come up with, but you deny and prevent the Russian point of view, then you have a bias. And you have a bias in a particular direction that is in line with your government. That is no different than mainstream media. That's the way they function. Media is not separate from the political space. It's nonsense. Those things are fused. It's like space-time. They're just different elements of similar thing. Political leanings need to get their point of view out. How do they get their point of view out? They're not standing out there on a soapbox. They're using media as the medium by which to impart their point of view. RT and Sputnik wouldn't have been destroyed in the United States if they were just not non-biased actors, but if it didn't have an element of political leanings just built into the framework of it. So yes, degenerate psychopaths, yes, I don't doubt Alexander G. All right. Oh God, we have an esoteric conversation. Humans today have severed the connection that they crave and replace it with religion. I think human beings have a tendency to organize things, if that makes sense. Like, if I can make something repetitive, it's easier to do. It gives me a pathway. It gives me a direction to go. And whether that's with a job, whether that's at a factory, or whether that's with a religion, where here's a path to God. It's clean, it's straightforward. You just go to church, you sit there, you pray. Hey, you may fall on your knees, fall on your face ever so often, but this is the pathway. This is the way to go about it. I think it's that. I think it's just part of being a person. That's the way we do it. I think it's wrong. I mean, like, there is some weird shit out there. Like, remote viewing is very bizarre. And anybody, for the most part, can do it, or anybody can try it. It's not about your point of view. It's a real thing. You sit in a room, you get numbers, write those numbers down, and you sit in a room and think shit up. There's a signal to noise component to it that is difficult, but it definitely works, especially the first few times you do it. You tend to have a higher hit ratio. The US military was doing this for decades. Soviets were doing this for decades. The US military got involved because the Soviets got involved. And some of those people like Pat Price, Ingo Swann, Joe McMoneagle, those people were astonishingly good. The stuff that they were bringing up, which means that there's something else that we're missing. We've removed from ourselves. And I agree, replaced it with religion, like this ecstasy at times. People speaking in tongues and all of this stuff. This stuff is nonsense from my point of view. It's weird. But there is psychic or psi function that is part of the human experience that we've removed from daily life and daily existence. It's weird to me. You don't even know what this is. Like, meaning we don't know what this is. We're just kind of in it. Knowingness, or this fake knowingness, is different than actually knowing, if that makes sense. Or familiarity is different than knowing. Those are different things. Yes, I'm familiar with this thing, but no, I don't know what this thing is. But the familiarity can give me this false sense of knowing. When people are talking about this kind of psi function and stuff, and they're like, oh man, that I don't see how that works. You don't know enough about existence to make a determination about whether something like that works or not. It's just being honest, right? There's this great line in Three Body. I believe it's Death Sin. And they come in contact with this thing they call a slip of paper. And they are researching it, working through it. And I have no idea what it is. No idea what it is. No clue what it is. But they're calling it a slip of paper. But they've been working on it for so long The people are like putting their head through it, putting their hands through it. And one guy has a nightmare where in his mind, it was like the tables being turned over. And he says, I had this idea that there was at least be one table that wouldn't be turned over. He said, that is not the case now. Every table, every fucking table is going to be turned over. Nobody is safe. Nobody gets out of it. And he wakes up from this nightmare, freaks out, and goes running to this scientist. And he's telling the scientist, like, dude, it's like, why are you freaking out? And he makes this point of saying, what he says, weakness and weakness and something else are not adverse to survival, but hubris is. Like hubris will get you killed. And what they thought was a slip of paper that they were playing with, investigating, they got so normalized to it that they were familiar with it. But again, they were mistaking familiarity with knowingness. And what they found out was destroyed reality. I mean, it was taking things from 3 dimensions and forcing them into 2 dimensions, which made reality into a painting. It was just eating space at the speed of light. Oh, that book is so good. God, that book is so good. That book is so good. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. Prophecies as in descendants of fallen angels, reptilians, Illuminati, controlling the world, using Jesus' religion as an excuse, Pike's prediction about World War III. Look, I do accept that those things are controlling mechanisms. I get it. But do they believe it? Like if my mom goes to church, Mama Thomas, and she would sit there, she would sing hymns, she would raise her hand when there's something that tingles her. And she would pray over her food. You know, God blesses food. Don't let anything happen to the food. But then if you say, hey, why don't we get rid of food testers, like the thing to make sure the food is safe, and just have prayer? And she would say, you're out of your mind. Or if I would say, hey, I'm jumping into this country, and she would be like, is there a war? I say, hey, can you just pray to make sure I'm okay? You're out of your mind. It's one thing to accommodate a certain persona and point of view, and to group yourselves with other people of that particular persona as a cultural thing. Belief is different. And I don't mean shallow belief, I mean real belief. Like when I hit the light switch, the light is going to come on. Okay, that's a strong belief. That is grounded. Now, I could be wrong, but that's a strong belief. Do they believe it? 3 a.m. between them and their God, do they believe it? Or is that something that they're grouping themselves with? I tend to believe the latter. When shit hits the fan, they don't believe that shit. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Lady Axis religious is poison. See, I don't think it's poison, though. Lady Alex, I don't think it's poison. I just don't. Look, I don't buy it. But I think people need more. Not more religion. It's just, it sounds weird. You have a political system, right? And in a political system, you try to organize yourself in particular ways to the betterment of yourself and larger society. But is that enough? Like, sure, you can work, you may have kids and family, those things may be important to you, and you may organize your life around those things. But I will tell you, my questions of existence goes beyond those things. And I would imagine a lot of people's questions of existence goes beyond those things. Now you can say you spin your wheels, fair enough. Some people are built that way. It's just kind of, it is what it is, what it is. Those people want something more. I don't know if the political system nails into people these notions of Like, you can make a rational argument and say, well, you don't kill people because, I don't want to be killed. So that's a bad idea for us to be okay with as a society. Okay, let's make a law saying let's not do that. Like, you can make rational arguments of things that you do and don't do because of the larger implications of those things. I mean, you can make an argument. Theft, robbery. I would argue making sure that you have a decent society, making sure people can grow. All of those things are rational acts that you want and need to have a decent society that is not at each other's throats. But I don't know, I think sometimes you need more. I think there's a spiritual component. I think religion has beat out the spiritual component in many respects. But I don't know. I don't think it's poison. I don't have that, not that brutal with it. All right, capitalism is based on waste. Yes, agreed. Which is why I'm saying my point of view is not about a capitalistic system. And it's not even waste. It's based on scarcity, forced scarcity. Like when you have a computer that plan obsolescence, where you know the thing is going to go belly up in a few years because you need to buy another one because that's the way the system propagates. That's insane. Like, you think of the amount of time it took to dig those materials out. You think of the processes that went into making these components and everything else, and then within a few years, just toss it. Okay, that's a waste. Agreed. But it's scarcity is the point. I need you to be, to not have enough. So I need you to work. I need you to, you build a society around that, as opposed to abundance, where you say, okay, we're going to overproduce because the goal of it is not to maximize profit. The goal of it is human development, advancement, etc. It's a different point of view. Agree. Totally agree. And one last one before we call this a day. Oh, we have a chat. Okay, I read that one. And last one. I don't believe in higher power, but in inner power. The kingdom of Yahweh is within. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to articulate it. Like, if you're doing an OBE, for example, out-of-body experience, and are you within or without? I know that's too esoteric for this channel, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I did the OBE thing, it was kind of like you are, yeah, I don't know. Because there are different thoughts on it. Like, some people think it's this kind of internal model of the world that you're functioning in. If you're talking about like Robert Monroe, when he was having his OBE travels, I mean, he was all over the fucking place. He was like in space and shit, talking to beings in other realities. Now, some people will say, okay, he was dreaming. Well, not necessarily. I mean, when I did my OBE, I was awake the entire way through. It was freaky. It was weird. Terrifying at some points. Like, usually I have to inch my way into that stuff, but it has this feeling like there's vacuum cleaners on your ears, like where it's just very loud. And it feels like your heart is beating out of your chest, even though your heart is not really beating out of your chest. It's like your energetic body you're feeling it for the first time. And so it feels charged up. And then it's just kind of silence. And I know for me, it's like my eyes were closed, but I could see the entire room. And I kept thinking to myself, don't think about anything terrifying. Which, by the way, if you're telling yourself don't think about anything terrifying, you're going to think about something terrifying. You're manifesting reality in your thoughts are manifesting reality in that sense. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about that one way or the other. We have one more. Alexander G. Sarge Mall this time really is based on insane messianic madness. Alexander, I don't disagree with you. I guess my thing is, do they believe it? Like, and I guess that's a moot point. There's some that do. There's some that do. If we help the Jews build a temple, we find a red calf, then Jesus will return and murder everybody on the planet that doesn't belong to a certain thing. Yeah, I guess some of them do. All right, I am going to call this a day. I'm going to say thank you all. I'm going to say, oh, wait, one more. Reason why I consider it to also be Antarctica. Oh, I see, Antarctica Treaty, that no countries could break or fighting outside to move towards New World Order. Feel like it's all a big chess game. Look, I agree with you that it's a chess game in some respects, but from my point of view, it's a chess game for primacy, or world supremacy. If there's something underlying it, maybe, I don't know, it's a flat fact. I will tell you, for me, like I do with Ben Channel, when Trump came in office, I said I will give him the benefit of the doubt to see what he does. We'll see. When it became clear that he was moving in a particular direction, my point of view went in that direction. Like, look, this is what he's doing. I can see that Western forces and the white world, quote unquote, has made a choice to double down on this idea of American supremacy, and that they're taking action in the way that they're going after countries, the way that they're pushing countries, the way that they're setting fires in certain countries to maintain that world supremacy, even as they acknowledge, or at the very least say that they acknowledge, that there's a multipolar world. That is not the world that they want. They're doing everything in their power to prevent their world from coming into fruition. Whereas Russia, China, India, South Africa, et cetera, you're probably going to get African nations, et cetera, maybe even parts of the Middle East, once you see something form in earnest to move in a particular direction, saying, we don't like your hegemony. We don't like the supremacist attitude. We want to move into something else. We want to use other than the dollar. That's when all hell breaks loose, because that's a direct challenge to global supremacy of the West. I see that happening. That seems clear to me. If there's something under it, something esoteric under it, there's no way for me to see that. I hope does it make sense? Like, I don't need the esoteric part to see what they're doing in earnest. The esoteric part doesn't do anything for me, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. It's just an excuse to take certain action. But the esoteric part is less relevant to me in the context of what they're doing in physical matter reality and what they're doing on the global and world stage. What they're doing on the global and world stage only requires, this is in our best interest, so we're doing it. If you want to add in the esoteric component in order to kind of boost that self-interest, fair enough. But does Israel calling themselves God's chosen make a difference in the context of, we're stealing land because it's in our best interest to steal the land? We're stealing land because that's what we want to do. We want to take it. It's in our best interest. It's self-interest. You could say, God told us this. I don't give a shit like that. Oh, okay. But let's be honest, it's self-interest. 3 a.m. between them and their God. We want these people off the land because we want to steal the land. Stealing the land is the point. It's a self-interest. Adding religion to it is almost irrelevant. I don't think it's a religious argument. The religious argument is just something they tell themselves in order to somehow boost the self-interest thing. I hope that makes sense. Godfather of Cinema, shout out to you, Godfather of Cinema. Thank you for that. All right, guys, I'm going to call this a day. Thank you all for your support. Honestly, you make the show what it is. I'm thinking about doing a weekly roundup show, not necessarily bringing in guests, but just kind of hanging out with the audience and going through news stories. It's a way, one, to chat with the audience, B, increase revenue for the channel, and hit stories just kind of directly. Even if it don't get a huge number of people, it still may be interesting for the show. We'll see how it goes. I think that's it. I want to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to say you can support this content through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, memberships, buy me a coffee. All of these things help the content. All of these things help the show. You have my deepest appreciation for it because, as I point out, many of these shows are demonetized. Less so recently, but still, it happens. And if I'm being bluntly honest, I'd like to be less reliant on YouTube. So if you can, thank you for support. But even a like and even a share are also important. So thank you all. Not to mention just joining as we do this program. So you have my deepest appreciation. You allow me to do, I guess, what I ultimately like to do. I do need a vacation, but all things being equal, I enjoy doing it. You all have a fantastic day. I will see you bright and early Monday. I think we should have a power show next week. Sabrina Sabbs may be joining us. Hopefully I can get Brian Beletic, Patrick Kennis. I have to give them a rest. That's why I can't give them every week. I have to rest them over the course of the week because it's just mechanics of it. Yeah, I think that's all. You all have a fantastic day. Signing off. Be good. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. And I'll see you Monday morning. Have a good one all.